Good morning, everybody. I'm Robin Bent in the Office of the Center Director within the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research at FDA. I will serve as the discussion facilitator for today's meeting, which is part of an FDA initiative called Patient-Focused Drug Development. We have a full agenda, and I'm going to briefly walk you through it. We'll start with opening remarks from Dr. Nikolai Nikolov, Director of the Division of Rheumatology and Transplant Medicine in the Office of Immunology and Inflammation in the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research here at FDA. After Dr. Nikolov's opening remarks, we'll hear from Dr. Teresa Mullen, Associate Director for Strategic Initiatives, who will talk about FDA's patient-focused drug development efforts. We'll then spend some time hearing from Dr. Dinesh Khanna from the University of Michigan, who will provide us with a background on systemic sclerosis. Then we'll move into our discussion with individuals who are living with systemic sclerosis or scleroderma and their loved ones and advocates. We'll have two sessions. Our first session will focus on the health effects and daily impacts of systemic sclerosis that matter most to individuals. Our second session will focus on your thoughts about current approaches to managing systemic sclerosis. I'll better explain the meeting format and process right before we get into our first panel session. But first, I want to touch on a few logistics and a few housekeeping points. This meeting is taking place in a fully virtual setting and is focused on hearing from people who have personal experiences with systemic sclerosis. Throughout the day, we'll have polling questions, and you'll have the opportunity to share your experiences by using either the chat feature in the bottom right corner of the meeting screen or by calling the phone number that we will be putting on the screen throughout the meeting. This meeting is being webcast, and the live webcast is being recorded. Both the webcast and transcripts of today's meeting will be archived on our website. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nikolai Nikolov, who will be providing our opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to make sure that there is audio and video.
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to this virtual public meeting on patient-focused drug development for systemic sclerosis hosted by the FDA. We're excited to be here today to hear from you, the patients, your loved ones, and caregivers about how you think about systemic sclerosis and what you look for in systemic sclerosis treatments. The agency, the scientific community, and other stakeholders have recognized the significant gaps in our understanding of this complex and devastating disease from the perspective of patients and their families. I understand we have representations from patients, caregivers, and advocates. And I thank you all for being here today and being part of this meeting to share your powerful stories with us. You are here today to educate us about what are the things that are most important to you as patients, families, and caregivers who deal with this chronic illness. And we're here to listen and try to better understand the very important perspective that of patients with systemic sclerosis and your families and the struggles you face every day. The FDA has recognized the need to have all stakeholders involved, and particularly patients, in identifying the key elements of clinical development, such as endpoints and outcomes, that would represent more accurately the burden of disease. In that respect, the FDA is committed to including patients' perspective in drug development. While FDA plays a critical role in drug development, we're just one part of the process. We protect and promote public health by evaluating the safety and effectiveness of new therapies, but we do not develop drugs or conduct clinical trials. This is done by other partners and stakeholders, including medical product developers, healthcare providers, and federal partners who are also present today. Today's meeting will give us all an opportunity, important opportunity, to hear directly from you about the symptoms that matter most to you, the impact the disease has on your daily lives, and your experiences with currently available treatments. Information provided through this format can better inform the benefit-risk assessment of new therapies, identify areas of unmet need, and help drug developers and regulatory authorities design programs that are more relevant to address how patients feel and function. This has resulted in patient groups having a significant impact on drug development in recent years. Today's meeting is a very important dialogue, and I hope that this is just the beginning that will lay the foundation for future conversations. The systemic sclerosis community is clearly engaged and eager to participate in this effort, which is evident from the impressive attendance at this virtual meeting. This meeting is as important to us as it is to you. So thank you for joining us. We really appreciate this opportunity and are looking forward to a very productive discussion today. With this, I will turn it over to Dr. Teresa Mullen, who will provide backgrounds on the FDA's patient-focused drug development efforts. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Teresa Mullen, and I'm the Associate Director for Strategic Initiatives at the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. And I'm very glad that you were able to join us today for this meeting. I'm going to give you an overview of FDA's Patient-Focused Drug Development Initiative, which this meeting is part of. Next slide, please. And so I want to start with saying a little bit about FDA's role in medical product development and evaluation. Now, FDA's mission is to protect and promote public health, and part of that is to evaluate the safety and effectiveness of new drugs. And while we play a critical role in overseeing drug development, we're just part of that process. FDA does not develop drugs, nor do we conduct clinical trials for the development of drugs. And, however, our review divisions do evaluate the results of those trials, and we do oversee and provide oversight during drug development, including clinical trial oversight. And so that's how we're able to really assure safety and effectiveness of the drugs and the integrity of the development process. Next slide, please. And so what is patient-focused drug development, and how does that fit into this? Well, PFDD is a systematic approach to help ensure that patients' experiences, perspectives, needs, and priorities are captured and are meaningfully incorporated into drug development and evaluation. Next slide, please. The evaluation that we do for new drugs means that we really need to understand the patient's perspective. And patients are uniquely positioned to inform FDA's understanding of clinical context and regulatory decision-making. Prior to PFDD meetings, we didn't really have a lot of mechanisms for collecting patient input. They were really limited to discussions that would occur with regard to specific applications that were under review, for example, through an advisory committee meeting. And only a few patients can participate in those meetings, and they need to undergo conflict of interest screening and meet other criteria. PFDD meetings provide us with this more systematic way to obtain patients' perspectives on the severity of the condition and the impact of that condition on their daily life and their assessments of available treatments, how well those treatments are working for them. Next slide, please. So this slide gives you a sort of timeline for how long we've been doing our patient-focused drug development meetings and bringing stakeholders together to hear the patient's voice in a given disease area. We established this program in 2012, and we've been conducting these meetings since 2013. And so far, FDA has conducted over 25 of these meetings, and we also have established an externally led patient-focused drug development meeting option to really expand the capacity here to have more meetings, because patient groups were telling us that they really wanted to conduct a meeting in their disease area. And so we really value the information we've been collecting in these meetings. It's been extremely helpful in informing and giving FDA insights about what it's like to live with a disease. Next slide, please. And so this gives you a sense of the range of the diseases that we've been exploring and hearing about in patient-focused drug development meetings. And you can see it's a very wide range of disease areas. And yet in every one of these meetings, we have asked similar kinds of questions about the impact of the burden of the disease and the burden of treatments. And the questions have worked very well in helping us get a better understanding. And in addition to these meetings, we've had over 30 at this point and counting externally led meetings for patient-focused drug development. Next slide, please. Now, these meetings are set up in a sort of town hall style of discussion format, which is different from the typical public meeting that FDA might have. They begin with an overview on the clinical background and currently available treatments typically provided by one of our senior medical staff. And that's followed by a session that's focused on hearing patients' views on the symptoms and daily impacts of the condition on their life. We begin this with a panel of patients and caregivers who will give their firsthand experience about that symptoms and daily impacts, and that provides a nice springboard for the facilitated discussion to bring in more voices from other people who are participating in the meeting. And that's followed by a discussion on the current treatment options. And again, we begin with a small panel of patients and caregivers talking about their experiences and their story, and that provides a good springboard for the discussion of others' experiences with treatments and what the treatments are able to do for patients and where they fall short. Next slide, please. Each patient-focused drug development meeting is tailored to a degree to meet that specific disease area. And FDA does encourage patient advocates, researchers, drug developers, healthcare providers, and others to attend these meetings. However, our focus is on hearing directly from the patients and their caregivers. And so we ask others to remain silent and stay in listening mode during these discussions so that we can all hear directly from patients and caregivers and patient representatives. And then after a PFDD meeting, a Voice of the Patient report is developed to summarize what we've heard from patients and caregivers during that meeting. Next slide, please. So with that, I want to thank you again for joining us today. We're really looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us about what it's like to live with systemic sclerosis, and we know that it'll be extremely valuable to us in our work going forward. Thank you again.
So I'd like to thank Dr. Mullen. Obviously, I'm a bit biased, but I think these PFDD meetings really hold an important place in incorporating the patient voice into the medical product development process. And now I'd like to ask Dr. Dinesh Khanna to unmute and turn on his video to begin his presentation that will provide us with an overview of systemic sclerosis. Dr. Khanna?
Good morning, everybody. And it is a great pleasure to be here. Let me pin my slides. So good morning again. It's a great privilege and pleasure to be presenting on scleroderma or systemic sclerosis. I think in a very important meeting on the patient-focused drug development for systemic sclerosis. Next slide. Here are my appropriate disclosures, although I'm not talking about any therapeutics today. Next slide. So what is scleroderma? It's an orphan disease, and the word comes from two Greek words, sclero, meaning heart, and derma, meaning skin. There are approximately 200,000 to 250,000 people in US who suffer from scleroderma. As I show below, scleroderma can be divided into localized format that usually affects young people, and systemic sclerosis or systemic scleroderma. I think with our estimates, there are approximately 75,000 to 80,000 people in US who suffer from systemic sclerosis. Next slide. So this slide is from a review article that I and Professor Christopher Denton from London published, and I will walk through this slide. The upper panel are patients who have early diffuse scleroderma. What you see is marked skin thickening. You see hand contractures in the middle, and you see a person who had this diffuse scleroderma, and I will define these terminologies. For about 15 years, you see thinning of the nose and thinning of the lips. On the left lower panel is a patient or two patients who have limited scleroderma, something called CREST syndrome, C-R-E-S-T. You see a little bit of skin thickening in the panel B, but you also see evidence of what we call telangiectasia in the gentleman on the left lower side, some nail fold changes and calcinosis. But what we worry quite a bit as clinicians is the multi-system involvement with the digital involvement, Raynaud's phenomenon, digital ulcers, unfortunately amputation, GI involvement, in the middle panel, lung fibrosis, pulmonary hypertension, cardiac involvement, cardiac fibrosis, and lower panel, renal crisis, disability, and calcinosis. So as we talk about this disease, we must admit the multi-system heterogeneous involvement of this systemic autoimmune disease. Next slide. So I only have one slide on pathogenesis of scleroderma. I must state that over the last 10 to 20 years, we have made leaps on understanding the pathogenesis of the disease. Any autoimmune disease, we think about an environmental trigger. We think about the role of your DNAs and your epigenetics, which are the environmental factors that are heritable but do not affect your DNA sequence. And that leads to, in scleroderma, what we call tripartite pathogenesis, or a three-pronged pathogenesis. On the left side, I'm showing you vascular involvement, vasculopathy. Almost everybody with systemic sclerosis have Raynaud's phenomenon. Unfortunately, some of them develop digital ulcer, as shown on the left side, and marked and remarkable fibrosis of the internal vessels. There is dysregulated immune system, autoimmunity with scleroderma autoantibodies, and that results in fibrosis not just of the skin, of the musculoskeletal system, but also internal organs. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about epidemiology of systemic sclerosis. I'm focusing largely on or in United States. The peak age of onset is 30 to 50 years with a female predominance of 3 to 5:1. It is similar to other autoimmune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis and lupus erythematosus. It's a rare or orphan disease, and this is the work done by Professor Maureen Mays in Detroit, Michigan, published in 2001, where she estimated a prevalence of 276 cases per million. In Europe, it's a little bit less, 88 to 160. And if you look at the incidence, which are all the new cases every year, there are only about 19 cases per million per year. So here's my calculation. If we estimate 328 million people in the United States, that's based on the Google search I did, there are about approximately 6,000 new scleroderma people that are diagnosed every year. So truly an orphan disease. It's quite heterogeneous, as I showed you in the slide. And I think as a clinician who runs a very large scleroderma program, I'm reminded on a daily basis the high morbidity and the high mortality among all rheumatic diseases. Next slide. So this slide is to classify. Classification is used by epidemiologists and physicians for clinical trial and for epidemiological purposes to define the prevalence, incidence, and other aspects. But the slide is only highlighting that systemic sclerosis is not just skin involvement. The first row shows you the skin thickening, but then there are other aspects, the fingertip lesions, the abnormal nail fold capillaries, the telangiectasias on the face and the palm, the lung involvement, the Raynaud's phenomenon, scleroderma autoantibodies. So it's truly a multi-system disease that can affect different organs. Next slide. So when, as a clinician, I see a person with scleroderma, the first question I ask myself is, do they have systemic sclerosis? I use a classification criteria to help me, and then I further divide people into limited cutaneous and diffuse cutaneous scleroderma. One thing, it's very important to clarify for the audience, limited does not mean only limited to skin. Limited, as shown on the left side of the slide, are people who may have finger, hands, forearm, face, and leg involvement. And that's 60% of all the systemic sclerosis people that have systemic sclerosis in US. On the right side are diffuse cutaneous, which have a lot more skin thickening of the upper arm, torso, and thighs. And there are 5 to 10% of patients who have sine scleroderma. In other words, they do not have any skin thickening, but they have scleroderma antibodies, and they do have internal organ involvement. Next slide. So when patients come to me, I spend about 60 to 90 minutes during the initial visit. And it's important for us to do that because most of the things that happen in systemic sclerosis happen early in the disease. Here is a distribution, the natural history from University of Pittsburgh cohort provided to me by Professor Tom Metzger there. And what I'm showing you, the diffuse patients where the skin thickening is progressing over the first 2 to 5 years. But more importantly, that's when people get lung fibrosis, also known as interstitial lung disease, muscle involvement, tendon involvement, contractures, Raynaud's phenomenon, digital ischemia, renal involvement, myocardial involvement. And therefore, my role as a clinician without having very effective therapies is to really educate the patients and make them be aware that these complications may occur. And I will go over my clinician viewpoint, how I manage these patients. Next slide, please. Why we differentiate between diffuse and limited is because people with diffuse disease have a higher mortality due to higher and more progressive internal organ involvement. Here's a slide that shows diffuse scleroderma patients are more likely to have significant heart involvement, renal involvement, large joint contractures, and reduced survival. On the right side of the slide are limited cutaneous patients, and the only complication that seems to be higher is pulmonary arterial hypertension, which is a later complication of systemic sclerosis. Next slide, please. In our practice, we also look at the autoantibodies, scleroderma autoantibodies, and that's shown on the left side, and it helps us to prognosticate. It tells me as a clinician whether you are more likely to develop pulmonary arterial hypertension. You are more likely to develop interstitial lung disease such as topoisomerase 1. You are more likely to develop scleroderma renal crisis such as RNA polymerase 3. I also want you to be aware of the right side of the slide where we have been looking at the gene expression. These are the advances that I'm very, very excited about, that I can and other colleagues can define based on skin biopsy and blood whether you have fibrotic pathways that are activated or predominantly inflammatory pathways that are activated. Next, please. So here is one slide on a clinician viewpoint. You come to my office and apart from education, this is what I am thinking. I need to screen you for early organ involvement. Can I prevent internal organ involvement if possible? Can I reduce your disability, and can I decrease the progressive disease in the heart, lungs, and other organs? That is what I am thinking as a clinician. And on the left side are patients with Raynaud's phenomenon, active digital ulcers, marked vasculopathy or fibrosis of the vessel in pulmonary hypertension, and we tend to use medications that are vasodilators such as calcium channel blockers, sildenafil, and all the pulmonary arterial hypertension approved medications. On right side are patients who have predominantly lung fibrosis, skin fibrosis, heart fibrosis, and we go to non-FDA approved medications such as immunosuppressive therapies, mycophenolate mofetil, methotrexate, antifibrotic therapies, a new FDA approved therapy called nintedanib or stem cell transplantation. So this is my point of view as I am talking to you during the first year of your disease. Can I prevent something? Can I screen effectively? Can I reduce your disability? And most importantly, can I decrease, if you have lung fibrosis, can I stop the progression of the disease? Next slide, please. Next. So here are two slides that had a big impact on how I think about and how I change my point of view of outcome measures. This is a study that we did and we published in a journal called Journal of Scleroderma and Related Disorders, where we asked people with early scleroderma, how do you feel? And here's a patient of mine that really touched me, and he said it feels like all the time that I have a mask on and stretched out of shape, especially over my chest, lung, and expanding, and not expanding. Of my body, this bit are the tightest. Next slide, please. And I want to talk about the journey of a person who's diagnosed with scleroderma. The initial symptoms are non-specific fatigue, pain, constitutional symptoms, losing weight, you start to have puffy fingers, thickening of the skin, Raynaud's phenomenon, and this leads you to go to your primary care doctor. Primary care doctor sends you to a rheumatologist. Rheumatologist may be able to treat you, send it to us. So there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of misdiagnosis, such as rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. There's a lot of frustration that is involved. And on average, patients take about 1 year from the onset of symptoms to coming to our clinic. There are treatments that are not FDA approved, and I think I really applaud FDA to have this PFFD meeting. And you can see what people feel: fearfulness, exhaustion, pain, unpredictable course, depression, limiting function, complications that are associated with the disease. Next slide, which is my final slide. So as a clinician, as a trialist who has been doing clinical trials for the last 20 years, these are the lessons that I thought about last week when I was developing these slides. I think there is so much enthusiasm among the sponsors to do clinical trials in scleroderma. It's a wonderful time. We have learned so much about pathogenesis, but it's getting difficult to find people who qualify because of an orphan disease. It is difficult to find scleroderma community because lack of expertise outside scleroderma community. There has been marked heterogeneity in the traditional outcome measures we use. You have seen me pinch the skin. You have seen us do lung function tests. And I think finally the focus of this meeting is that there's lack of patient's voice as primary approvable endpoints. So I thank you for your time. I have one more last slide thanking University of Michigan where I work, and I look forward to this wonderful meeting. Thank you for the opportunity again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khanna. I think that it's really helpful for us to have this presentation to set the stage for what we're about to hear from our panelists and meeting attendees who have lived experiences with scleroderma.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, I'd like to share with you a bit more about how this meeting will proceed. It's been truly an honor to work with the panelists that you'll meet in just a moment as we prepared for today's meeting. And thank you to Drs. Nikolov, Mullen, and Khanna for really helpful presentations that give us some context to think about this next part of the meeting that's really yours. If you're new to this area of what FDA does and what medical product development is, then I hope we gave you a little bit of background on that, and especially some of the key terms and words we'll be using today. Before we kick off this next part of the meeting, where those of you with lived experiences with scleroderma or systemic sclerosis are the stars of the show, I just want to share a bit of information in terms of kind of an orientation to help you understand the meeting structure and why we've set it up this way, because it's very purposeful and intentional. So for those of you that are here representing yourselves or your loved ones with lived experiences with systemic sclerosis or scleroderma, you are the experts and have the expertise, and the expertise that you have is what we're all here to hear. We've kind of flipped the script on the type of meeting that most of us go to, where you have a lot of medical professionals giving presentations and having discussions while you listen. Today, we've reversed that. We've heard some opening remarks from some experts in their fields, but you are the experts in your field. You're the ones who know what systemic sclerosis is like to live with. So our goal today, as we start this discussion portion of our meeting, is to really foster an open dialogue of personal experiences and perspectives on systemic sclerosis. Our two main topics for discussion are health effects and daily impacts of systemic sclerosis or scleroderma, followed by current approaches to treatment. We'll kick off each session with a panel of individuals with systemic sclerosis. There are 5 panelists for the first topic. After the panelists, we'll broaden the dialogue to include other individuals and family members who are joining us on this webcast. Anyone who's watching the meeting who identifies as a person with scleroderma, systemic sclerosis, or a family member, loved one, is welcome to participate. Aside from the panelists, we don't really have anyone else identified to speak, so we need all of you out there to kind of share your experiences in order for this meeting to be successful. And the purpose of the panel presentations is to really build, or the purpose of the open dialogue portion is really to build on the experiences shared by the panel. And I'll ask a number of follow-up questions. Throughout the day, polling will be done via computer or cell phone, and as I mentioned previously, we're taking comments from online through the meeting chat feature and via telephone if you've got something to add. So this is your opportunity to really build on the kind of invitation that the panel will create to open up what is really tough subject matter, and we know that. So just feel the empowerment that you have in this meeting today to be heard not only by the FDA, but by representatives from medical product developers, researchers, and clinicians about systemic sclerosis and what you'd like to see happen to help those with systemic sclerosis. So please take this opportunity, and we hope that this will be your invitation to participate with us in the discussion. So we really encourage you to call in via phone to share your comments, and when speaking, you can remain anonymous. I mean, you don't have to give us your name. You may state your name if you want, but what we really care about is your experience. And so when you call in, there's a couple of things that will help us. One is if you stay on the topic we're discussing, whatever topic we're talking about. If we're talking about symptoms or if we're talking about daily impact, try to think about what that topic is and stay as close to that topic as possible. Obviously, in a fully virtual setting, there's a little bit of a lag time, so there's some flexibility in that. But if we can stay as close as possible, that would be great. It's also helpful if you can keep your points to maybe just one or two things so that we can go to as many people who want to speak as possible. And for transparency, we request that at the time of your first comment that you disclose if you're affiliated with an organization that has an interest related to systemic sclerosis, or if you have significant financial interest in systemic sclerosis drug development. If you're submitting comments via the webcast, you can provide whatever name you'd like. Don't worry about us being overwhelmed by comments. We can handle it. We'll try to summarize them as much as possible. We'll do our best to share the comments we receive via the web platform. If for some reason we're not able to read all of the comments out loud today, your comments will be incorporated in our final summary report. So they definitely will be impactful. And so now, as Dr. Mellon mentioned earlier, we also have a public docket for this meeting that will be open until December 15th. We encourage you to share your experiences and expand on what we discussed today through the public docket. The comments will be incorporated in our summary report as well. Anyone is welcome to comment through the docket, whether you're joining us via the web or you know someone who wasn't able to participate today, but you think they have something to contribute. Please encourage them to submit their comments. You'll find the link on the slide here, and we'll also email this link to folks after the meeting to everyone who's registered for the event on the website. You can submit your comments as anonymous, and I want you to keep in mind that if you submit to the public docket, that is, the word public is there for a reason, and this will go to the website. So please think about how much personal information you want to share. And we don't really need your personal information. Again, we don't care what your name is or where you live. We care about what your experience is. So please keep that in mind, that what's important to us is really your experience. So you can just say anonymous, anonymous, or just leave the parts when they ask what your name is empty. So moving on to just a few ground rules for our discussion today. We're here first and foremost to listen to those with scleroderma, systemic sclerosis, and their family members. We'll try to accommodate everybody who'd like to speak. We're happy to see over 200 people on the webcast today, and some of those who represent research and drug development are also registered for this meeting. We believe that the input that you hear today will be important to you as well, and we just ask again that you stay in listening mode. FDA staff is really here to listen. We know that you may have questions about drug development or drug review, and if you have specific questions, we encourage you to share them via email with our FDA staff. Our contact information is on the meeting website, and we'll get back to you with more information following the meeting. As has been described, our discussion today is focused first on the health effects of systemic sclerosis and daily impacts, and then approaches to managing those health effects. Our discussion may touch on some scientific treatments. However, the discussion of any specific treatment should be done in a way that helps us to understand the broader issues, such as what health effects are being addressed and how meaningful that it is to patients and individuals and family members. The opinions expressed here are personal opinions. Therefore, demonstrating respect is of paramount importance. We very much appreciate what complex and personal topics we're addressing in this public meeting, and we expect everyone to share this appreciation with us. Our discussion is going to focus on health effects and treatments, and we know that this is a very complicated issue, and there are many concerns and many questions you have and things that you have to think about living with systemic sclerosis and getting the support that you need. These are all important. Today, we want to focus on the topics that FDA needs most input on so that we can best fulfill our role in medical product development and decision making. And so while you take in the information on this slide that outlines how to submit comments, I'd like to take the opportunity to ask my FDA colleagues on the FDA panel to turn on their video and introduce themselves. I'm starting with Dr. Nikolov.
Morning, everyone. I think you have seen me already. My name is Nikolai Nikolov. I'm the director for the Division of Rheumatology and Transplant Medicine. I'm really thrilled to be here and participate in this meeting.
Rachel, I think you're muted.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Good morning. I'm Rachel Glazer. I'm a clinical team leader in the Division of Rheumatology and Transplant Medicine at the FDA.
Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Hull. I am a medical officer also in the Division of Rheumatology and Transplant Medicine, and I'm looking forward to hearing the patient's input today.
Hi, my name is Raj Nair. I'm an acting team leader with the Division of Rheumatology and Transplant Medicine, and I'm happy to be here.
Hello, my name is Shira Schreiber. I'm a medical reviewer in the Office of Tissues and Advanced Therapies within the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Rothwell. I am a statistician and team leader for the team that supports the Division of Rheumatology and Transplant Medicine. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mary Joy Mahee. I'm a medical officer with the Division of Dermatology and Dentistry.
Good morning. My name is Nezana Trankovic. I'm a team leader in the Division of Dermatology and Dentistry.
Hi everyone, my name is Onyeka and I'm a acting team leader in the Division of Clinical Outcome Assessment, and the mission of our division is to integrate patient voice into drug development. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you everyone.
Thank you. From time to time during the meeting, we'll turn back to our FDA panelists to see if they have any follow-up questions or clarifying questions about what we just heard. I also want to introduce my colleague, Shannon Cole, who will be keeping an eye out for comments that come through the internet. She will be sharing those comments through the meeting. She'll also be coordinating with our other colleague, Lena Merzoug, who you will speak to if you call in to provide comments via phone. So let me turn to Shannon, allow her to introduce herself, and then we'll give everybody, all of our FDA panelists, a wave. Go ahead, Shannon.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shannon Cole, and as Robin mentioned, I will be monitoring the webcast comments during today's meeting.
Great. Thanks so much. So we'll have some polling questions today, and we're using a third-party application, Mentimeter, to run our polling. Polling on Mentimeter's site, menti.com, is anonymous and can be done via cell phone or on your laptop or tablet. Please note that we're not tracking individual people's answers, and we can only see responses grouped by option. You can access the Mentimeter poll in two ways. You can use your cell phone camera to view the QR code on this slide, which will take you to the survey, or you can go to www.menti.com and use the digital code on this slide to enter the survey. For some questions, you'll have one answer. For others, you may have multiple answers. These polling questions are meant to be a discussion aid for today and are not a scientific survey. So let me pause here and just make sure that everybody has had an opportunity to see the QR code and make sure that they are able to log into the survey. Okay, so with that, let's begin with a polling question. So please get your cell phones or computers ready, and we'll move on to our first polling question. I apologize, I have multiple screens, so I'm going to look to the side to see the results of the polling questions occasionally, just so that we can discuss them. So with question one, we're starting with some basic demographic questions so that you can kind of get familiar with the polling platform. So question one is, do you live in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, including the Virginia and Maryland suburbs? And you have two options. We have yes and no. All right, and there is a little bit of a delay between when we launch the survey and when we are able to see the results, just because it's about a 15 to 20 second delay. So we're going to give it just another second or two to see the results coming in and to see how it's working. All right, so this looks great, and it looks like everything is working. I'm hoping nobody's having any challenges with the application. It's usually a pretty user-friendly application, and I think that what we're seeing is really kind of one of the biggest benefits of moving to this virtual setting, which is that most of the people who are on the call with us today or on the webinar with us today are not from the DC metropolitan area. A lot of times we have a little bit of an overrepresentation in our in-person meetings that is clearly not playing out in our virtual meeting setting. So that's great, and I hope that throughout the day we'll have additional people, kind of maybe more of the West Coast people who thought that 7 a.m. was a little too early to start a meeting will be joining us. But I understand we have over 200 people on the webinar now, and it looks like it's just continuing to grow. So really, really excited about the potential for impact for this meeting. So thank you all. And now we're going to move on to our next question. So question 2. Have you or your loved one ever been diagnosed as having systemic sclerosis or scleroderma? And again, yes or no are the two options here. Again, we're just going to take a brief pause while the results come in. All right, great. Okay, so from this point on, we're going to ask that each polling question be answered only by individuals with systemic sclerosis or someone who is answering on behalf of a loved one with systemic sclerosis or scleroderma. And so we'll just give this a brief moment while we're while the answers are still coming in. Before we move on to question 3. All right, so now let's move on to question 3. And it looks like, as you can see from this question 2, we do have a really good variety of people on the meeting today, both patients and family members who are who are living with scleroderma and systemic sclerosis, and also a lot of the regulators and medical product developers and others who are really interested in hearing what you've got to say. And so that's really great, and I think that it really kind of captures what we're hoping for in the meeting. So question 3, what is your age? Now remember, if you're answering for a loved one, please answer with their age, and just the age range is perfect. And the options are younger than 18, 18 to 30, 31 to 40, 41 to 50, 51 to 60, 61 to 70, and 71 or greater. And so this is we have a great diversity in range, age range. As you can see, we have a majority of people kind of in that 51 to 60 area, but 41 to 50 is really also close. And we have a good number of people on the 30 to 40 range and the 60 to 70 range as well. So again, a great variety, a great spread of participation today, and I thank you guys so much for that. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our next question, which is, do you identify as male, or sorry, as female, male, or other? And again, these questions are certainly not scientific. This isn't really, we're not using this in a study. It's really just for us to get an idea of who's participating with us today on the webinar. It's kind of hard and a little anonymous to kind of be in this virtual setting where you can't look out at a room full of people and kind of see who's there with you. So this just kind of, we're just trying to decrease that anonymity and kind of build a community of people all here together with a common purpose and a common goal to kind of move forward. And so so yeah, some of these questions are kind of a little weird, but they're really just helping us join kind of come together as a community for the duration of this meeting, because we are going to be talking about a lot of personal things and personal experiences. So it's nice to be able to feel a little bit connected to the people who are talking, and maybe hopefully feel a little bit more comfortable sharing your experiences because of that connection. So so great. We see a majority of females. We do see some males, and we do have somebody who identifies as other. So again, what a great kind of diverse group that we've got going on here. And I think that's great. And it looks like the 20 to 30 second delay, we're kind of catching up with that, and we're seeing more and more responses. So wonderful. And so now we're just going to move on to question number 5, which is, what is the length of time since your diagnosis? And the options here are less than 1 year, 1 year to 5 years, 5 years ago to 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, or I'm not sure. All right, and right now it looks like a majority of people have been diagnosed for more than 10 years, which, I mean, that's a long time. But we do have some people who are recently diagnosed within the last 5 years, and then some, about 4 people who are saying that they were diagnosed 5 to 10 years ago. So great. Thanks for that, and thanks to everybody. We really just have one more question before we move to our first panel discussion. And this question is a little more complicated, and I'm going to ask that you let me read you the options for the answers, because we ran into some technical limitations and couldn't put as much information into the answers as we had hoped. So I'm just going to go ahead and read them to you. The question is, which subtype of systemic sclerosis or scleroderma have you been diagnosed with? Select all or any that apply. And so A, we have as diffuse, which is defined as skin tightening or thickening affecting large areas of the body, organ damage potentially to the GI tract, kidneys, lungs, and heart, pain or arthritis, high blood pressure. B, limited. Skin tightening or thickening is limited to fingers, hands, or face, heartburn, Raynaud's phenomenon, pain or arthritis. Crest syndrome, red spots on the body as a result of enlarged blood vessels. Okay, C is sign, symptoms of organ disease, including Raynaud's phenomenon, but no skin thickening. D is systemic sclerosis with overlap syndrome, which is an overlap of features of other systemic rheumatic diseases such as systemic lupus erythematosus, rheumatoid arthritis, polymyositis, or Sjogren's syndrome. E is other, and F is I'm not sure. All right, and it looks like right now what we're seeing is that we have a majority of people with diffuse, a good number of people with limited, one person with sign, and about 6 people with systemic sclerosis with overlap syndrome. So that's great. Again, we have a range of people participating today, and I think that that's what we really need to hear from. We don't need to hear from, I mean, we understand that everybody has kind of their own experiences with everything, and this will give us really a really good kind of big picture idea of what people are experiencing. And we hope that those of you who are participating in the polling will also participate with us actively in the discussion. So with that, let's start with our first panel now, and I'm excited to hear from this panel because, so as we mentioned, topic 1 will focus on the health effects and daily impacts of systemic sclerosis, and we have the 5 panelists who will start off the session by sharing their experiences. In about 30 minutes, when the panelists are done sharing their experiences, we'll move into the interactive portion of our meeting by asking you about your experiences. And if there's something that you hear from our panelists that really resonates with you, or you want to share a bit of your experience, please consider sharing your comments via the web, or closer to the end of the 30-minute period, maybe around 11:15, 11:20, maybe call in to 1-800-527-1401 to share. And you should know that if you call in to share your experiences and are placed on hold, the hold music will actually be this meeting. So not music, but this meeting. So you won't miss out on hearing from our panelists if you call in to speak. And so with that, I would like to start by inviting Amy Gietzen to share her experiences. Amy?
Hi, thank you, Robin. So really my experience with scleroderma has been a difficult one. I was diagnosed when I was 19. So, you know, I was really young, and just getting through a typical day with scleroderma and how that really impacts my life is, you know, it can depend on day to day. So, you know, I have the Raynaud's, which causes a lot of pain, numbness, sensitivity in my fingers and in my feet. But there's also weakness and pain in my joints and stiffness, making it hard to bend, to reach things, you know, to stretch, to kneel. So things like that, which really make it extremely hard to accomplish daily tasks. I also tend to get really terrible ulcerated sores on my fingertips and sometimes on my toes. So they're really painful and bothersome, and they take forever to heal due to the poor circulation from Raynaud's and not being able to clot my blood because of the scleroderma. So, you know, it's been really hard for me to kind of get through my day-to-day life. But I think, you know, if you have a good support system and you have people who are willing to help you and you have that positive drive just to get through each day, you can find ways that you never would have thought of to kind of make things happen, you know, like using gadgets or just doing things differently. So yeah, I think that that helps. You know, before I was diagnosed, I was really an active person, and I was a dancer for many years. I swam for many years, and, you know, but with systemic sclerosis and being diagnosed at 19, you know, you start to realize that you can't really do the things that you wanted to do and that you enjoyed doing. So dancing became quite difficult for me. You know, I had developed pulmonary fibrosis, so it was hard to breathe and keep my stamina up. And you know, one of my biggest heartbreaks with this disease is not being able to finish college. I was going to be a nurse, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I was really tired, fatigued. I had a lot of problems with my hands, so it was a big regret. You know, a good day for me would be just being able to get out of bed and do things myself, and just kind of being able to go do something that I enjoyed, you know, like shopping with a friend or, you know, having lunch with somebody. And a bad day would really kind of be like me in my PJs all day with my cats watching TV, because it literally hurts to breathe, let alone get out of bed. So I think that's, you know, but it can change over time. Like, you can have good days, you can have bad days, you can have things that you once couldn't do before, you know, or things that you never did that now you like to do. So I guess it all depends on what kind of person you are and how you want to get through certain things. You know, for me, my disease, the changes were hard and fast in the beginning. I developed pulmonary fibrosis, I developed GERD along with reflux, difficulty swallowing, tightness of my skin, especially around my mouth, elbows, fingers, and wrists. And then I kind of seemed to even out for about 7 years. However, you know, I've never been symptom free. I've never not had never not had an issue. So I know, you know, I'll be reaching my 20 years of diagnosis next February. So I think, you know, my symptoms have always still progressed. Now I have pulmonary hypertension. I have a lot of heart issues. I have the telangiectasias, like from the top of my head to the bottom of my toes. So, you know, I have contractures in my hands, which makes things difficult. So I started to have symptoms looking back now when I was probably like 15 or 16, but I wasn't diagnosed until I was 19. So, you know, it was a little bit of an overlapping gap. Today I would say my disease is pretty well managed. But, you know, it's not really slowed down. But I have a really great team that kind of makes sure everything is going according to plan, and I stay really positive and on top of my medications and my treatments, and I'm really an advocate for myself and my own body. So I think that's really important. If you're a person living with scleroderma, you need to be your own advocate and really speak for yourself. It's your body, you're living in it, and you need to trust yourself in that you know what you're doing, and you really need to be educated on scleroderma because a lot of people don't know what it is. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Amy, for being the first one to speak, but also most importantly for sharing your experiences. There's a lot there, and I think we're going to talk about it a little bit more later. But now we're going to move on to Julie, who is going to share her experience. Julie?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Amy did a really good job. I just want to say I'm not yet diagnosed. I'm trying to be diagnosed. That is incredibly difficult. But I do participate in some Facebook groups, and from doing that, I have come to know that this disease affects everyone differently every day. And it's just really challenging and really difficult. But there were some questions that were asked of us in order to participate, so I'm kind of want to go through those. Which aspects of systemic sclerosis have the most significant impact? So for me, I use an alternative drug because I'm having trouble getting diagnosed, and that's called low-dose naltrexone, and that controls the skin symptoms for me. So my biggest problem is fatigue. Robin had asked me to concentrate on that, and when I say fatigue, I don't mean I'm just tired. I mean, it's hard to explain how tired you are. You're tired when you wake up in the morning. You take a nap and you're still tired. It's just never ends. So fatigue, GI difficulties are significant. The shortness of breath is very limiting. The brain fog is another thing. That's a problem. I get dizzy when I drive. I have pain. And the next question was about specific activities that are limited for me, or I'm unable to do. And for me, the biggest problem is work. And the fatigue and the brain fog and the pain really limit my work. So for me, I have to limit my work. I have to change my work. I have to really concentrate hard on my work, which makes me more tired. I have to reschedule work. Actually, I own a business for 23 years, and I'm trying to sell the business because I can't run it anymore. Other things that are, other activities that are affected are, pretty much everything. Daily tasks, housework is really hard because, your back hurts, your joints hurt, everything hurts. Cooking meals, grocery shopping. I'm too tired to go grocery shopping, So on good days, I just want to say I'm still tired. On good days, I still have to limit my work. I still have random brain fog. But on the worst days, I have to put off things. I have to reschedule things. And I have to say that most days are bad days. There's very few what I would call good days. The next question is, how has your systemic sclerosis changed over time? Unfortunately, it's worse. It started a couple years ago, and then about every 12 months, it seems to worsen. Next question, would you describe your systemic sclerosis as being well managed? I use many things to help manage symptoms. I'm always looking for things to help. I use diet. I use, try to exercise or stretch at least. I see a Chinese doctor. He does acupuncture and cupping. That helps. Massage helps. Anything. You're just constantly trying to find things that will help. Sleep. You have to get rest and sleep. So next question, what worries you most about systemic sclerosis? The heart and lung involvement is really, really worrisome. So if I could change one thing about systemic sclerosis, what would it be? And it would be that heart and lung involvement. That's really a worry. And the worsening of that is just a big, big concern. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie. I think that it was really helpful for us to hear about kind of all of the challenges that you're facing, particularly kind of the overwhelming fatigue and also all of like the things that you're really kind of concerned about as you kind of work through the process. So that was really helpful. Thank you. Now we're going to go to Rosemary, who is going to share her experience. Rosemary?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Hi, Rosemary. Yes, ma'am.
Very good. I may be the longest diagnosed person in this group, almost 35 years. And so the last speaker, Julie, talking about how it gets worse and worse. For me, it did get worse and worse in the beginning, but there were then periods that were good. But it's still constantly a challenge, and I call it the daily maze. Temperature, just talking about how it is every day to live. So all the decisions you have to make every day so you can get through a day. Cold is a problem. I had the terrible ulcers on my fingers. I couldn't take the cold. It just painful. And moved 1,400 miles away from my family, from the north to the south, because it was that bad. I had started to lose part of one finger. I was miserable. I couldn't leave the house, but I had to leave the house. I also have overlap syndrome. So I also have lupus and fibromyalgia. So I also can't take the sun and the heat. So now I live in a place where there's sun and heat. So I need to manage that. I have a problem with artificial light. So sitting in an office environment, I would become very, very exhausted just from the overhead lights. I have them take out the bulbs over my desk. Of course, they make fun of me for that. And I also have fevers, and that's probably the lupus. So I never know when I'm going to have a fever. And with the pandemic, my fear is now I want to go someplace or get on a plane or do something, and they're going to say, you have a fever. So that's something I fear. Skin issues, although initially I had the hardening of the skin on my arms and my hands, that type of thing, and some changes to my face, over time that stopped, but my skin is very, very sensitive. So I have to be cognitive of what type of fabric is touching my skin. And I have massive allergies, food allergies, skin allergies, all kinds of things. So I have to only use, I've spent thousands of dollars trying this soap, this makeup, that detergent, certain bedding. I can't sleep in a bed if I can't tolerate the bedding. My shoes, I can't always have on closed shoes. So just getting ready in the morning for skin issues is a problem. I may find something that works and then it doesn't work anymore. So I'm constantly changing. As far as things that I like to do, going back to what Amy was saying, I played the piano. I was pretty good, and I was a dancer, and I did choreography. And that's something that had to go away a long time ago. I painted. I could do that a little bit. Just putting on jewelry is difficult. Buttons are difficult. So buying clothing, you have to worry about how you clasp it. Housework, if I'm having a good day, I will choose to do some housework knowing that I will have 1 to 3 days of recovery. So I can do the housework, but I can't do the housework. Food is the biggest problem. My biggest issue for about the last 10 years has been the gastrointestinal. So initially it was the terrible reflux, feeling like I can't swallow the food. I had a very limited diet to begin with because of extreme food allergies. But now it's the impaired motility, the digestion, and also the volume. So I can really only eat 1 meal a day. To eat more than 1 meal a day is like emergency room time, that bad. Yeah. The other thing is, and I was going to talk about, and I had spoken with you about it previously, is my story about sleeping. So when I lived in the north, to go to bed, I wore pajamas and a big fluffy robe with a hood, with gloves, with socks, with slippers over that, under a bunch of blankets plus an electric blanket. And then my face was still cold, so I ended up with a blanket over my face. I couldn't sleep. I've never been able to sleep. I've had this problem all of my life. Now that I'm in the South, on a 90-degree evening, I can get by with 1 blanket and 2 comforters. But I don't have to have the robe and the slippers and all of that. At night, the cold is worse, and I get terrible itching, and I guess it's my blood vessels are go into a spasm. So sleeping and eating are giant problems, which of course it makes a whole cycle of exhaustion. I can sit for so long or stand for so long or walk for so long. Some days I can walk almost half a mile, and sometimes I can't walk at all. That has a lot to do with the swelling and with the pain. Lifting is out of the question. Stooping is a risk of fainting. As far as social activities, if I'm going to, and of course I haven't now for 7 months, but if I'm going to participate in something, I have to know, is it inside or outside? Will I have a place to sit down? I have to eat before I go, so that I don't eat something I shouldn't eat and then have a situation. It takes me, with the gastrointestinal issues, it used to be 1 hour, now it's 3 to 4 hours per morning to be able to be dressed and out of the house because of the issues. Travel, it's the same thing. How long is it going to be? Am I going to be able to use a bathroom on the plane, or is there a bathroom along the way? How strong am I going to be? And then the other thing is that there are medications for all of these different things, but I am allergic to many, many medications that causes something much worse. The other thing is, when you've had an illness for this long, how long can you stay on some of these medications without having an adverse effect from the medication? So in addition to that, fainting, seizures, brain fog, wild weight differences. At the very beginning of, after my diagnosis, my weight went down to 94 pounds, but I've been up to 145 pounds. So it's all, I seem to have evened out now. So I'm doing pretty well. But overall, the nosebleeds, I don't know. There's a lot of things. But I would say for anyone who is more newly diagnosed, you have the internet. My diagnosis was before Google. Someone said to me, I think somebody who has what you have is in People magazine. That was in the late 80s. And that was all I had. I went to the library. I couldn't even find anything on it. One of the first physicians I saw said, "Tell me about it. I've never seen this." So there's a lot more as far as resources, and and I guess the positive thing I'd want to say is after 35 years, I'm still here.
Great. Thank you so much, Rosemary. And we're all very glad you're here, both here and here at this meeting. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and really for sharing kind of a little bit of ending on kind of a hopeful note, because I hope that that things will continue to get better. So thank you. And now we're going to hear from Amy Harding.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be part of this discussion today. I'd like to share with you some more significant health effects and daily impacts of having systemic sclerosis that I have experienced. I was diagnosed with scleroderma in 1998. I started having symptoms about a year before I was diagnosed. My primary symptoms were started with my hands swelling and constant aching of my finger joints and my wrists. I thought I perhaps had carpal tunnel because I worked on the computer a lot, but the blood work proved that it was scleroderma instead. Initially, the pain in my hands and other joints, such as my knees and shoulders, tightening of my skin, digital ulcers, heartburn, and sensitivity to the cold had the most impact on my life. 22 years later, I must say the calcinosis that I get in my fingers, my elbows, my toes, my ears, tops any of the prior symptoms. All of the symptoms have been manageable through medications for the most part. Any activity involving the use of my hands has become more and more difficult. Opening jars is almost impossible. Typing, I don't know how many times I have to correct a word or two because I've added an extra M or an N or some other crazy letter in there. Bending at my knees is not easy, and I find myself very cautious when I do it because I'm afraid that I'm going to fall over and potentially break something. Dental appointments are extremely stressful. I recently had 2 dental appointments in the past month. I thought that my mouth was going to rip apart because it's much smaller than it used to be. I can't open my jaw very wide. Fortunately, I did have some very good dentists that were, aware of my situation and were very kind when doing the work. Constant exhaustion. That has had a huge impact on my daily life. Heartburn, daily heartburn limits what I can eat. The pain in my hands makes simple things like washing dishes difficult. Occasionally I have really good days, but it's difficult to figure out why yesterday was so good and today is so lousy. I just have never been able to get to the bottom of that. On the worst days, depression really kicks in for me. I suffer from chronic depression. I do take medication for that. But on my worst days, I don't want to interact with anyone. I mostly want to sleep, so my mind shuts down and I don't have to deal with the realities of scleroderma. There is good news, though. I'm happy to say at 57 years old, I have very few wrinkles because there's so much collagen in my skin. The skin tightening, though, has tapered off quite a bit. I don't experience digital ulcers like I did in the first 10 years of my disease. My Raynaud's and the heartburn have gotten worse, and the calcinosis just, for me, just puts it over the top. I feel my scleroderma is managed as well as it can be. My multitude of symptoms are being managed with medication. Other things like calcinosis, I'm just hoping and praying for some sort of treatment or cure for that real soon. My biggest worries about having scleroderma are not being able to take care of myself and dying young. If I could change anything about my systemic sclerosis, it would be the constant pain and the uncertainty about whether or not a new symptom will present itself today or tomorrow or the next day. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to be here again.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was, I mean, you raised some symptoms that had not been mentioned before, and I think that that will be really good for us to kind of explore as we move forward in the panel. Now we're going to go to our final panelist for this session, Kimberly. So Kimberly, if you wouldn't mind going ahead and sharing your experiences, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure thing. Good morning, everybody. I just want to take a quick moment. Thank you so much to the other panelists for sharing. I've heard so much my own story and yours, and we're all connected, and I just want to thank you. Sorry. I can't remember living a day without pain. For the last 21 years of my life, every single day I've experienced varying degrees of pain. Upon thoughtful examination, I've been living with pain longer than without it. I remember the onset of my symptoms began when I was just 19 years old and a junior in college. It all started with what I thought was the stomach virus. I was assured that I'd feel better soon as long as I hydrated and rested, but I never felt better. If anything, I began to feel worse. And it was with every passing day, it just got worse and worse. And it was around the same time that I noticed something in my breathing had also changed. The magnitude of my pain only intensified over the years. And as my chronological age increased, ironically, my pain did the same. This alarmed me. I knew that whatever was happening to me, it had to be terrible. I just couldn't put my finger on it, and neither could any of the providers I visited. I was often dismissed, ignored, or belittled when explaining my pains. I heard things like, "You're too fat," "You're just depressed," "It's in your mind." But if you know me, then you can attest to the fact that I love finding solutions to problems. So I spent the better part of another 6 years trying to find answers. And the symptoms that plagued me never diminished. If anything, they had become more acute. I kept the severity of my pain level to myself for as long as I could. I never communicated with my loved ones about the full extent of the torment I was experiencing. I felt alone in isolation, and I almost believed the disparaging remarks I received from the culmination of some of those doctor's visits. I started to doubt myself, and I'd have been shunned into silence for fear of receiving further trivializing remarks from those closest to me, and I just couldn't do that, so I kept it to myself. However, my pain was valid. It was palpable. It was tangible. It was tethered to me. I knew that it was very, very real. And after a traumatic experience of locking up in my bathtub for a half hour by myself, I lived alone, I finally revealed my truth regarding my pain. By opening up and speaking out, I received a helpful key puzzle piece to help me close the searching chapter of nearly 9-year quest of trying to find out what was happening to me. I was told I needed to see a rheumatologist and request an ANA test based upon the symptoms that I had described. And just 10 days before my 28th birthday, my beloved rheumatologist granted me the gift of knowing. I received my answer. I was diagnosed with systemic sclerosis. I was a shell of who I used to be. My skin was taut, discolored, itchy, shiny. My movements were so stiff. My fingers had curved, and my dexterity was compromised. In the nearly 9 years I went without being diagnosed, I missed out on vital treatments. Irreparable damage had been done to my body. My lungs are attacked aggressively. And at that visit where I received my initial diagnosis results, my rheumatologist decided to show me an x-ray of my lungs. But my lungs were not visible. Instead, there were 2 murky clouds, and they had these random nickel-sized holes that resembled bullet wounds. That's what was looking back at me. And at this current juncture of my life, my lungs have continued to betray me. I'm now on 4 liters of supplemental oxygen. Oxygen is being forced into my nose through this not so subtle cannula. And because my lungs can no longer work independently, it's now a symbiotic relationship. Who am I kidding? I'm reliant upon this thing. Without it, I'd be like a fish out of water, gasping for air. Portable oxygen is my sustenance. My lungs often cause me to feel full, so I no longer get hungry in the traditional sense. I usually have to force myself to eat or be prompted. And the constant coughing has made me quite fearful of eating a lot of the time. I'm afraid of aspirating into my lungs for fear of infection or regurgitation. My chronic cough has interrupted way too many engaging conversations and provokes me from expressing myself at any given moment. It's so violent, it comes about suddenly, and the impact and the assault of coughing, which in turn causes my body to writhe in pain. I swear I've injured and bruised a few ribs because of this cough. Most days I don't feel well, but not everyone can detect that. Sadly, I've masked my pain so well with an unassuming smile, people don't know that behind the smile is agony. There's an intense level of pain that I can't control at all, and most days I don't take any pain medication. So I go throughout my entire day feeling horrible pain, and yet I'm glad to be alive. So the joy of my spirit comes through, and I think that's what people may tend to see. But then there are some days, oh my God, where I'm unveiled. Like, there is no mask to don. Those days are the hardest for me. I stay to myself, pretty much bedridden, and the only way to cope is by falling into what we can only describe as like a hibernation type of deep sleep. It's my body's natural defensive response to help me endure the extremely intense pain. I never know what the day will bring, not until I make it to the next day. And when I do, I open my eyes and the first thought is, oh, I made it. And I'm just super excited about that. I'm grateful because I no longer have to live in survival mode. I'm living every day for what it is, a gift. Thank you.
Wow. So thank you so much, Kimberly. And there's a lot to unpack in these experiences. And I think we really need to thank Amy and Julie and Rosemary and Amy and Kimberly for sharing their experiences. And they did it really to help us move the field of systemic sclerosis forward. And so thank you guys so much for that. And for those of you who'd like to call in or submit comments to be shared, as a reminder, here is how to do that. And so I guess now I'd ask, like, how many of you have heard your loved one's own experiences reflected in the comments shared by at least one of these speakers? In a virtual setting, it's not really possible for me to see you nodding or applauding in the way that we usually see in some of our PFDD meetings. So we're going to use some more polling questions to get feedback from all of you who are online, who are joining us online. And again, polling is limited to participants who have lived experiences with systemic sclerosis, either as users or as family members and loved ones. And if you have thoughts to share related to the discussion questions on screen, please submit them via the web or over the phone. And so I think if I recall, Shannon, do we have anybody who wanted to call in and share some of their experiences as well? I think if I recall, we have a call from a caller in New York. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. We have an anonymous caller from Mayfield, New York, and they would like to discuss the overall health effects and daily impact.
Great. So please go ahead, caller. Hello? Hello? Okay, so I'm not sure that we can hear the caller, so why don't we give our producers a little bit of time to kind of straighten out the audio issues. And what we can do is, Shannon, did you mention that that we had received some comments online that you might be able to share with us?
Yes, we have received a few comments online, so I'll go ahead and kind of summarize what I'm seeing here. We received a comment from Rick, who has had systemic sclerosis for 10 years, and he believes he's past the worst symptoms, but he continues to have flare-ups and contractures in his hands. We also received a comment from Susan, and she had a rapid onset when she was 50 years old. It began with Raynaud's, which she didn't understand at first, and then she experienced horrific pain and swelling in her hands and fingers. It took almost a year for her to get diagnosed, and during that time she had skin tightening over her entire body and so much pain that it was difficult to work. She was working full-time in a demanding career and became so disabled that she eventually had to quit. Her arms, hands, stomach, legs were hard like a rock, and she had contractures in her hands. She also had very bad fatigue. Her face became so tight that it was hard to eat and swallow, and she eventually had such dental issues that she had to have 9 teeth extracted. So that's pretty much what we're seeing on the web right now, and really hearing people's experiences with their symptoms, and many comments kind of discussing those contractures in the hands as well as the fatigue.
Great. Thank you, Shannon, and thank you to those of you who are sharing comments via the web. At this point in time, I would like to turn to my FDA colleagues and just see if they have any follow-up questions on anything that they heard from our panelists. Go ahead, FDA panel or FDA colleagues, please.
Hi, this is Joy from the FDA from Dermatology and Dentistry. The first panelist, Amy Beetson, you had mentioned that you use gadgets to kind of help with the day-to-day function. I was just wondering what those gadgets were, how they assisted you, and if the other panelists had, workarounds throughout the day, ways to function better.
Yeah, for sure. Amazon is a wonderful place. But my hands had a lot of self-amputations from sores. I don't know if you can see. So I needed stuff to be able to do things independently, because for me, I still wanted that independence. So my dad, he's really great. He helped me find like little gadgets to open pop cans or jars. We found like a little gadget to help you loop buttons into the buttonholes, stuff to put your shoes on, to reach things up high if you couldn't reach them. We changed all the knobs like in our kitchen and doors to those ones where you just push down, so I was able to open them instead of the turning knobs that I couldn't do. So I think you just have to work with, like I said, finding ways to still keep that independence, and just kind of think about things in a different way.
Yes, I agree with Amy. Gadgets are your friend. There are reachers that I have to use to grab stuff. There are automatic jar openers. I call them my handy-capable tools. Like if you want to open a soda can, there's another one for that. The ones that help you open pill bottles. There's so much. And then we're also like, it's like ingenuity, right? So you get a straw, you put some tape on the end, and you try to pick up that coin off of the ground because we can't grab it with our fingers. And it's just amazing how innovative we are.
Great. Thank you guys for answering that question. Dr. Mejia, did you have more questions, or perhaps Dr. Nikolov has a question as well?
Yes. Hi. Thank you for this for these moving stories. I think we're learning from all of you, and this is kind of the purpose of this meeting. I had one question. I think Amy Harding mentioned that she has calcinosis, and I just wanted to find out how does that impact her, in what way?
Sorry, had to do a little work to get myself unmuted there. Calcinosis, I primarily get it in my hands. Twice, 2 years ago, I had to be hospitalized because I was in such pain with it. And, you know, they put me on some intravenous antibiotics and that sort of stuff to make sure that I wasn't getting an infection or anything like that. But when I get it, if it's really hard to explain. It's like this little rock is coming out of your fingers, and if you accidentally touch it or hit it on anything, the pain just sends you through the roof. I mean, literally, I've actually become quite good at getting the calcinosis to get to the surface. I either soak my hands or I wrap them in bandages with either Vaseline or like Neosporin. And then eventually I can pull the calcium out, which sounds kind of gross, but it's better out than it is in. And I pulled out some pretty big pieces where it has actually brought me to my knees and put me in tears. It hurt so bad.
Amy, have you had them surgically removed? Like I've had some on my forearm that they had to kind of take out and then stitch back together.
Yeah, I had this thumb, I had some surgically removed. Would I do that again? I don't think so. Not that I can bend my fingers a whole heck of a lot, but this thumb, you know, I can't bend it at all. It's still a little bit numb, and I don't blame that on the surgeon or anything. I knew what I was getting into, and I still get calcinosis in that thumb anyway. So it only took it away for, you know, maybe a couple, 2 or 3 years at the most.
Yeah, they can still come back. Like they still grow back. So it's like a, you know, fighting a losing battle because you're still going to get them. Yeah.
The worst case I did have, though, was most recently was in my big toe. I thought for sure that I had gout, although I'd never had gout in my life. But my big toe got really swollen and red and hot, and it ended up being calcinosis in my toe. I couldn't put my shoes on. I could hardly walk. It was just unbelievable. And I don't know.
And I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know if I answered the doctor's question or not, but that's what I go through.
No, absolutely. You know, this is what we want to hear. You know, how all of these different symptoms or how all of these manifestations you have affect you or impact your quality of life and functioning. So that was very helpful.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I think Rosemary might have just a brief something to add regarding the calcinosis as well. So let me turn briefly to you.
Thank you. The first time I was aware of it, I didn't even know what it was. I went to the doctor because I thought I had hurt my back picking up my son, but I actually had it under my shoulder blade. And it was very painful. So I've had it in my hand since then. I have it right now near my thumb. I also have 3 small spots in my kidney that I think that's what it is too. But yeah, the first time was the shoulder blade. It hurts.
Thank you, Rosemary. So I understand that we have somebody on the line. I believe Isa do we have you on the line so that you could share your experiences? Hello? Hello? Hi, we can hear you, but if there's a way to that the audio can become a little bit louder, I think it would be helpful for everybody. I'm not asking you that. I'm wondering if the studio people can work on that a little bit. Are you guys there? Yes, can you hear us? Yes. Do we have you on the line so that you could share your experience? Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me? I can't hear you guys. We're going to play the telephone game then, I guess. Lena, if you could ask Isa to just go ahead, we'll go with that. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I have been a patient for 5 years, and one of the things that I kind of live with on a daily basis is whenever I need to see a physician for general things. An example, this fall I had a really bad cough, and I knew it was from, I live in farmland, and it was from allergies, and I needed some allergy medication. So I called the local doctor's office and asked to be seen, and my doctor was out, so I was going to see his PA. And when the PA got me the appointment, they immediately called me back within a half hour and said, oh my gosh, you have such a rare condition. I don't feel comfortable treating you. You need to go to the emergency room. So for something very simple that I knew I just needed general care for, I had to go to the emergency room, and which led to a COVID test and a chest x-ray and blood work, and actually thousands of dollars of expense because the doctors are so uncomfortable, general practitioners, treating us that I spent all this money for them to say, yeah, I think it's allergies. Here's the allergy medicine. Here's the prescription. And several hours later, I was able to go home. I doctor in Chicago and see some wonderful, great specialists at Northwestern, but I can't drive 3 hours for allergy medicine. And so this often can be a problem when we have to go into an ER for a common thing or see a dentist or doctor, an eye doctor. They don't want to treat us. And so the lack of knowledge day to day by the general medical population, I find I'm educating them on my disease and often kind of leading them with asking them for the treatments that I'm needing, which is a really awkward situation to be in. Thank you. I think that really echoes, I think, kind of something that Amy Harding was touching on earlier about when she was talking about going to the dentist and really having a specific dentist who understood the condition and kind of understood the challenges that kind of went with that. And it sounds like now, particularly with COVID, it's kind of added an entirely new dynamic as far as the challenges of receiving routine care. And I suspect, based on the number on the back side of the meeting, I can kind of see our panelists who have their videos on, and there was a lot of head nodding during you're kind of telling us about your experiences. So I suspect that this is an experience that really resonates with probably a lot of people out here, just based on kind of my survey of 5 faces that I see now, and the amount of head nodding that we've gotten. So thank you so much for sharing that. It was important for us to hear, and I appreciate you calling in. Just to everybody else who's on the line, if we're looking at the comments that are coming in, and we're looking at the phone calls, if there are any comments that we are not able to get to as part of the meeting, we will absolutely include them all in the Voice of the Patient report, so that everything you contribute will be captured and kind of memorialized as an important component of this meeting. Now, before we move on to our polling question, or our next set of polling questions, so get your cell phones ready. I wanted to turn briefly to Kimberly, who I think also wanted to make a comment about calcinosis or share her experiences very briefly about that. So Kimberly, can I turn back to you?
Yes, thank you so much, Robin. I was just going to share that at any given time, 5 of my fingers are affected, and I use my fingers every day, all day, because I'm a visual designer and a UX designer, and I have to type. And I find ways to, use some of the fingers that are working relatively well, but Band-Aids, I have to rely on them, like sometimes doubling them up. So the cushioning, like I don't feel the full impact of the pain. Of course, there's still pain, but it's just very hard to do what I do and when I'm designing. And I push past it. I don't really realize it in the moment, but at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that I'm using literally 5 fingers just to do my work. And I think so many of us can understand that.
Yes, thank you, Kimberly. I think kind of putting it into context to the daily kind of impacts is really kind of brings home kind of the visual of what the actual impact is. So I think these, and I swear I'm going to get to the polling questions, but I do think that we have one more question from one of our FDA panelists before we move on. So let me turn to our FDA panelists and see what question you might have.
Yeah, this is Nizana Trajkovic. I noticed that most of you complain of pain. Can you describe this pain? Is it a pain that is all over the body, or if it is in certain areas? I understand you have a lot of pain and discomfort in your hands, but are there any areas where you have pain? Can you describe that pain? Is there something that makes it better or worse, and how you deal with it?
Go ahead, Amy Eaton.
So I think for myself, I can't speak for the other ladies, but for myself, it's almost like I'm, I'm 38, but I'm living in somebody's body who's like 85. So I have the joint pain, muscle pain, stiffness, which causes pain. And then if I overuse my hands too much, there's pain. And it's like, it feels like an achiness, like your body's worn down type of pain. And I've tried a lot of pain medicine, but that doesn't really make the pain go away. It just kind of makes you not really care that it hurts. Especially when you get digital ulcers, that pain is like a pain that is undescribable. It is almost like a nerve pain, as well as if you got like a little blow of air on it, it is excruciating. So, I mean, I think it differs for everybody, but I think it's just like a constant achy stiffness of feeling like your body's just worn out.
For me, it feels like, to add on to what Amy's saying, it is an ache, but the pains vary. So sometimes it's muscle and bone pain. Sometimes it feels like bone pain only, or just muscle pain, because you're so inflamed, like you can actually see your skin, like the raises, the inflammation in it. Like if you're having an extremely bad day, you can touch it and you can feel the lumps of your tissue. It's excruciating. So think about when you have the flu and how everything hurts, and the fatigue, the pain, everything associated all at the same time, but magnify that by like a gazillion, and that's what it feels like.
So thanks. Yeah, I was going to ask if anyone else had anything to add. So Amy, please go. I was muted when I started to ask, so sorry about that.
That's okay. I agree with the two ladies. For instance, what hurts me the most, I used to have all the muscle pains and all that, but now I have a lot of pain in my hands. It's as if all the skin that was on my hands to cushion the bones is no longer there. And it's like you're hitting your raw bone on something accidentally. Like if I reach into a cupboard and I hit the shelf accidentally, the pain it makes you want to scream. It's just so, it's hard to explain. There are no words to explain it. It just radiates throughout my hands and up my arm, and it'll stay like that for a good 5 minutes, and I'm dancing around the kitchen trying to shake my hands so they feel better. So it's just an enormous amount of pain that we live with.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies, and I suspect that we'll be back to you in just a moment, but I did want to, at this time, kind of move on to a polling question, which is of all of the symptoms you've experienced because of your systemic sclerosis, which do you consider to have the most significant impact on your daily life? And so for this question, as this polling question, please feel free to choose up to 3 answers. The first one, the options being A, hardening or tightening of patches of skin, B, skin thickening, C, digital ulcers, D, painful cold sensitivity in hands or feet, Raynaud's phenomenon, E, heartburn or difficulty swallowing, F, digestive symptoms such as cramps, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, G, arthritis, H, fatigue, or I, other symptoms not mentioned. And for our panelists, if you want to look down at your cell phone and and participate, that is perfectly fine as well. Let me kind of go over here. Sorry, looking away so I can see the results. And it looks like what we're seeing is that we have about 20% of people with who have identified Raynaud's phenomenon as one of the most significant impacts. 18% of people looking at digestive symptoms, 16% fatigue, and so I think that is that sounds consistent with what we've heard from both Dr. Khanna at the beginning and also our panelists who are talking about it. But it also looks like there is a broad range across about which are the most significant, which symptoms have the most significant impact. And so with that, while you guys are finishing up the polling questions, I know that we have a caller on the line, Laura, who would like to share kind of some of her experiences and things. So let me turn now to Laura. Please go ahead.
Good morning. I was out of the bell curve age-wise for receiving this diagnosis of the diffuse systemic scleroderma. I was 60. And before I started having symptoms, about 4 or 5 months before this diagnosis, I didn't have any healthcare providers caring for me. I was on no medications. And within a very short period of time from this diagnosis, I have the interstitial lung disease. I had to go on oxygen 24/7 at 4 liters. My skin is tightening. My hands are becoming deformed. I have all the internal organ issues that we're hearing from the other panelists and folks calling in. Mine have gotten so severe with the GI tract and my bladder that I have incontinence with the bladder and the bowel, so that dramatically changes your quality of life and confines me to my home a lot of days when I'm dealing with those types of issues. And with systemic scleroderma, what I haven't heard from anyone is how, besides the typical other autoimmunes that we deal with, the Raynaud's and Sjogren's and stuff, are medications that we have to take to stay alive. And just this disease process in itself of the scleroderma, we can have other very serious diseases happen to us as well. And this summer, I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is cancer of the bone marrow and my kidneys. So I am dealing with those challenges as well now. So this disease is so multi-diverse, and with some of the support groups that I am involved with on social media, I find that those folks that are not in a large community where they might have access to university medical centers or multi-specialty facilities, that you have physicians that have never seen our type of problem, and we are very challenged with getting diagnosed and getting on the medications sooner rather than later so that we can help avoid some of the progression of the disease. I have not had to deal with that, but I was in a very, my career was a very rewarding one. I worked in the medical field for 49 years. I had to medically retire from that after getting this disease and getting so ill. I also had a private practice for 19 years as a massage practitioner, seeing patients with life-limiting diseases, and I had to close that practice. The governor appointed me to work with the Department of Health for 2 terms, the state of Washington. I was also an instructor in massage, and I had to resign from all of these positions. I also worked at a national level, and I had to resign from that position. My body, I do not have the energy or the strength or the stamina to do these types of things that I so thoroughly enjoyed before. It has just completely devastated my career in every aspect, and I have had to move in with one of my children to have help when I am needing it because of this disease.
Wow. So thank you, Laura. That was I'm sure, I think that really kind of picks up on the theme that we've heard, that it's not just the health symptoms, but it's kind of all of the implications that the health symptoms kind of lead to, and the limitations that we're hearing from our panelists and others. So it's more than just the health impacts. So thank you for that. And now I would like to turn to Sherry, who is also on the line, to kind of share some of her experiences and thoughts.
Hi, my name is Sherry, and I'm from Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, thank you.
I'm from Farmington, Michigan, and I actually am blessed to have my scleroderma. I have limited scleroderma, which mostly affects I love the term limited, first of all. When you say limited to someone with scleroderma, they just don't feel like that does it. I hate the word limited. It's limited to my fingers, obviously my GI tract, but what everybody is saying today is just such an inspiration to me. I do get to my care at the University of Michigan, where Dinesh Khanna spoke earlier, and if it wasn't for that university, I don't know where I would be with my health care. Laura, I could really hear what you were saying. You need to get quick help, and I actually moved from Arizona to be under this umbrella, a comprehensive scleroderma clinic that I don't know where I'd be without it. But what I wanted to talk about was my Raynaud's. Raynaud's, to some people, if they don't have scleroderma, is just this blue, pink, white change of finger color. But if you have scleroderma with Raynaud's, it's much more crippling than what it sounds like. Obviously, if you're not getting the blood flow to your fingertips, I get calcinosis under my nails, and it feels like you hit your finger with a hammer, and you need to almost drain that blood. That's what would happen in a normal person. Well, I get that with every flare-up of calcinosis that I get, and although the medical staff hates this, I drain it, just like I believe Amy was saying. And I drain it myself because if I go into ER with this pain, nobody wants to touch a finger that looks like it's infected. They don't know that it's liquid calcinosis that looks like toothpaste. So I just do it at home, and it saves everybody a lot of time. The other thing I do to improve my Raynaud's is I get an IV infusion. It was called Slowland, the medication, but now I believe it's changed to Velitri. And I believe Europe has it already in effect. And I don't know if the FDA has approved it here or how it all works. But anyways, I check myself into the hospital and get an infusion of Velitri. They have a 30-hour infusion now, and it's given through an IV. I don't have a port for it. And most people can do 30 hours and it's fine. For some odd reason with this very individual disease, I have to go for the 5-day infusion where you just do like 6 hours a day. And with COVID, nobody wants to put you in the hospital for that many days. So I've been going without, and I know my neuropathy is terrible. You don't know how many dishes I have broken. And my husband just is like, forget it. I'll do the dishes for you, honey. So that's a pro, right? Right there. But building your social, somebody was talking about your support system. And, you know, I think all of us with this autoimmune disease that's life-altering, we not only need to find what our new normal is, but I think you would agree that we have to get a support system that really will give us what we need to make it through. And we're part of a peer mentoring program at U of M. I don't know if other places have it or not, but I hear a lot of you saying you're on Facebook groups as well. And Laura, I'm with you. I need someone to tell me that they have incontinence. When I poop myself at 40 looking for my child's first bathing suit for his swim meet, which I'm still going to do, I want to know that there's someone else out there that did this, you know? That just helps us mentally move on. I could talk for hours about this disease. If you saw me, I don't look sick, but what I do is find my new normal. I find the support I need and the medications that we need. But I also agreed with someone else. What if I take the small purple pill for 40 years? What's that going to cause, right? So anyways, I just wanted to thank all the panelists. I wanted to share a little bit about my experience. And I put in another question about gum grafts. So if somebody finds that, I'm just curious if anyone has had gum grafting in their mouth and if they could share that experience. So anyways, have a great day. Be blessed. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I would like to just touch on the fact that the reason that these panelists did not speak a lot on treatment is not because they don't have extensive experience with multiple different treatments, but because we asked them to kind of stay focused on the topic 1 sessions that were really focusing on the health effects and daily impacts. And our second session will be treatments. And so I just wanted to put that out there so that you know that obviously everybody who is here on this panel certainly has kind of extensive thoughts and experiences with the treatments, but we're just kind of that's our post-lunch kind of conversation. So with that being said, I didn't know if I can turn back to you guys on the panel and see if you had any experiences with what Sherry was asking about, or and then I do think that one of our FDA panelists also has a follow-on question. So does anybody have any thoughts related to what we heard from Sherry? Okay, go ahead, Amy Gateson.
Yeah, I think she was correct in saying like it's amazing to have a support system. I have my parents who are amazing, and my dad's retired, so he's kind of like my travel buddy. But yeah, I work really closely with the Scleroderma Foundation, and I do a lot of virtual support groups with young adults, and I work very closely with a bunch of other organizations, with the SPIN organization out of Montreal. You know, I think it's really important to find support where you can, whether it be on Facebook, whether it be your local scleroderma support groups, whether it be seeing a therapist. I think, you know, you need somebody to talk to, even if it's another patient that you kind of just connect with. It's so important to be able to feel like you're being heard and like somebody is taking your truth or your journey into consideration. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's so important.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So let me turn now to our FDA panelists. Onyeka, did you have a follow-up question that you wanted to ask our panelists while we still got them?
Right. Yes. Thank you, panelists, for sharing your input, and this is so informative. So I guess my follow-up question is, in terms of Raynaud's attack, are there other stressors that would trigger a Raynaud attack for you guys other than cold? So I'm just curious if you guys have any other stressors that would trigger that. And then the other question I have is, for some of your symptoms, for example, fatigue, I'm interested to know if, in terms of the frequency of occurrence of these symptoms, are there days where the severity of your symptoms spike up, and are there days where it's better? So just wanted to know how, you know, if there's fluctuation in the occurrence of some of your symptoms, for example, fatigue or pain. Thank you.
Go ahead, Rosemary.
Sorry, the unmute didn't want to work. As far as the spikes and the fatigue, once that starts, there's nothing you can do, and you never can predict it, or at least I cannot predict it. So I can be having a good day and it hits me, and that's it. And the first part of her question was, because I had a comment on that too, but I also have a brain fog.
So that was the Raynaud syndrome, and whether it was just triggered by cold or if it was triggered by other items. Or
Oh, no, it's definitely because I left the cold world to come to the tropical world, and extreme stress, an emergency, anger, lots of things. I can actually see it happening, and I don't always realize it's happening, and somebody else sees it. They can see my hands turning colors and things happening to my hands. I also have things happen to my face. On and off, I have the lupus rash on my face. But no, it's not just the cold. All types of stressors can set it off and just put my hands into total spasm.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to comment on in response to the question, or else we can move on? We will move on. Kimberly?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, if I have too much caffeine or too much sugar, that will also cause like more constriction and pain.
Okay, thanks, Kimberly. And I see some nodding with some of the other panelists, so it might be that that is a shared experience as well. So thank you. Did you, Dr. Ila, did you have any other follow-up questions, or?
No, that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. So right now we're going to move on to our next polling question, and following that polling question, we're going to go to some of the comments that we've received online, because we have received a lot of comments, and I want to be able to share them with you. So moving on to question number 8, which is somewhat similar to the previous question, but there's a little bit of a difference in that this one is asking for you to focus on the single symptom that you consider the most bothersome. And I suspect that we may have missed a few of the symptoms that are bothersome to people based on the conversation so far. But anyway, let's do the question. So for all of the symptoms you have experienced because of your systemic sclerosis or scleroderma, which single symptom do you consider the most bothersome? And again, the options remain the same as for the previous question, with A being hardening or thickening of patches of skin, B being skin thickening, I'm sorry, first was hardening or tightening of patches of skin, B would be skin thickening, C would be digital ulcers, D, painful cold sensitivity in hands or feet, Raynaud's phenomenon, E would be heartburn or difficulty swallowing, F, digestive symptoms like cramping, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, G, arthritis, H, fatigue, and I, other symptoms not mentioned. And so looking at that, it looks like, there we go. So it's, sorry, I'm still having, so digital ulcers seem to be a very bothersome symptom. I feel like bothersome is really kind of an understatement of the impact of that. But so digital ulcers seem to be a large percentage of people find those the most bothersome. Digestive symptoms about the same, with the arthritis and Raynaud's phenomenon also being significant. Now, we understand that obviously asking you to pick one of a whole bunch of hugely impactful symptoms is difficult to do, and it's certainly not to discount kind of the challenges of all of these symptoms together as well. But so it looks like that's what we're seeing. Raynaud's phenomenon is now up to kind of 15%. And so while we're waiting to get some additional feedback on this polling question, let me turn to my colleague Shannon and ask her to provide us with an idea of kind of the comments that we're seeing online from people who are participating through the web chat. So Shannon?
Thank you, Robin. As Robin mentioned earlier, we are planning to incorporate all of these webcast comments into the meeting summary report. But I wanted to quickly summarize some of the key themes that we're seeing in a lot of these comments, such as difficulty sleeping and Raynaud's phenomenon. One participant mentioned that air conditioning and stress can trigger their Raynaud's. I'm also seeing comments about gastrointestinal issues such as heartburn and bloating, and also some symptoms involving the mouth, such as a dry or shrinking mouth, and the roots of the teeth are resorbing. Participants are also speaking about fatigue and the excruciating pain of calcinosis. We're also hearing about the importance of early diagnosis, as well as extreme pain in the joints and the muscles. One participant also mentioned that walking has become difficult because the cushion in their feet has deteriorated and it feels like they're walking on bones. And I wanted to just read one comment that kind of catches all of these key themes in one. This anonymous participant has had systemic sclerosis for 24 years. They have GI involvement, pulmonary fibrosis, Raynaud's, calcinosis, dry mouth and eyes, fatigue, skin tightening, and occasional joint and muscle pain. Raynaud's is their worst symptom. And they've been on 5 different medications at a time, but they still do not feel that their condition is well managed at this time. They have frequent digital ulcers, which take forever to heal and have caused permanent damage, pitting, and scar tissue on their fingers. And they say that the impact is cumulative. It's impacted their job and their lifestyle. And the calcinosis makes it extremely difficult to use their hands, since any pressure put on their fingers causes nerve pain. They also talk about GI symptoms, difficulty swallowing. They need to drink after every bite of food. And they eat small amounts throughout the day and can't eat a regular sized meal because they have delayed gastric emptying. Also difficulty not feeling hungry and having reflux after they eat a larger meal. So those are kind of the things that we're seeing on the webcast at this time.
Great, thanks so much, Shannon. And I think that was really comprehensive. And I feel like maybe that kind of helped us understand it. again, one of the frustrations of the virtual setting is that we have about 9% of people who have identified other as the symptoms that are most bothersome, and I don't really know that we have a way of getting feedback from people. I mean, if you did identify other, and you can type into the chat what you would consider other, that would be really helpful for us. Let me turn briefly to the panelists and see if they have any thoughts, if there was anything that, if they have any thoughts, or if they would have chosen other, if what other would have meant to them. So let me turn there again. Oops, sorry. My office is falling apart. Apologies for that. But so let me turn to you guys. Do you have any thoughts on these results? Do you think that these results really are reflective of kind of your experiences? And that for those of you who are involved in support groups, do they seem kind of reflective of the experiences that you know of from others?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if I had to pick, if I picked the other, for me, it would probably be my pulmonary issues, difficulty breathing, things like that. It's not always just about the skin, but I know with scleroderma, the main focus really kind of is the skin because it's a big issue. But yeah, it would be my breathing, and then I have had some cardiac issues where I've had extra beats, or I've gone into tachycardia from fibrosis in the heart. So that would be a one that I would probably consider other.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful, and I think that with that, actually, it turns out that it is 12:15, and we have actually kind of made it through, or I don't want to say made it through, because this is really a valuable session. I kind of wish we had given it a little bit more time, but I feel like I want to make a quick plug for our docket comments reminder, as well as the comments that you guys are submitting on the web, because I think we've really, I mean, it's clear that we've really just barely scratched the surface as far as the daily impacts and what you guys are experiencing day to day. So for those of you who are online, if you want to submit comments either through the webcast comment, or if you want to submit them to the federal docket, the public docket, to expand upon kind of what you've heard, that would be wonderful. And I would just like to take this opportunity to very, very much thank our amazing panelists who really took their time today and took their time really over the last few weeks to prepare all of their remarks and really think about this and really just open themselves up to kind of help us have a better understanding of this. And thank you to all of you who have participated online thus far. And with that, I just want to say thank you, and we have a 30-minute break that's probably now going to be a 28-minute break in order for everybody to go and kind of take a little bit of a break, hopefully get a little bit of lunch or at least a sip of water, and we will be back here at 12:45 Eastern Time. So thank you so much, and I will see you shortly. Thank you, everybody.
Robin. Thanks, Robin.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good break. We have limited time, so we're going to move straight into topic 2. As we've mentioned, topic 2 will focus on current approaches to treatment of systemic sclerosis or scleroderma, your experiences and your perspectives on that, what you'd like to see in an ideal treatment, if future treatments could be better, how could they be better? And we have 5 panelists who will start off the discussion by sharing their experiences and their thoughts. Before we launch into our panelists' experiences, I want to let you know that our first question for the open discussion session is actually 3 questions, and it's: what are you currently doing to treat your systemic sclerosis? How has your treatment regimen changed over time and why? And what symptoms would you like to be improved or resolved by treatment? So now we're about 30 minutes away from people sharing their answers, but if you're interested in responding to that question, please consider sharing it via the internet or by calling in to the 1-800-527-1401 number. So now I would like to start by inviting Monica to share her experiences. So Monica, go ahead.
Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, if we could just have our other panelists mute their phones right now. Perfect. Go ahead, Monica. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. First, I would like to thank the FDA organizers for giving me the opportunity to be heard. I was diagnosed with scleroderma 3 years ago. 22 years before that, my father had passed away of scleroderma. Through this time, I learned that there is a lot I can do that will determine the quality of my life. So I decided to focus on lifestyle. First, at a physical level, I mostly changed my diet, sleep, and exercise. We all know that diet is important, and I needed to find one that would be good for my GI symptoms. After trying many different types of diets, I ended up taking parts of many diets and making one that my body would like. Planning meals, shopping, cooking from scratch, cleaning can be time-consuming, but none of it would make a difference if I would not be relaxed and mindful while eating. I became a professional chewer. I really chew my food very well. If I would not do that, I would not be able to swallow my food very well. My digestion would be less efficient. I would have serious problems absorbing food nutrients. So, no more driving while eating in downtown LA for me. Instead, I pray. I feel grateful for having adequate food, healthy food on my table. Another change in my lifestyle, sleep. Even though I cannot fully control if I'm going to wake up at night because of symptoms, I can control the time I go to bed. When I don't sleep well, I literally feel like I am dragging my feet uphill all day long. My thinking, my speech are not clear, and I get so tired that I get vertigo. So I often compromise a nice family time around the TV at night with my husband for getting more sleep, and it pays off. And exercise. I have a wide variety of exercise routines that I can practice. I can go out for hikes, for a walk, for Tai Chi in good weather. If not, I stay home and I practice yoga. And if I am too weak for yoga, then I can do chair yoga. And I also practice yogic breathing exercises, which can increase moisture in my mouth, in my eyes. By the time I am done, I feel good with more energy, which is precious when you have an autoimmune condition. Now, if I lose focus, I don't exercise regularly, my joints will give me a reminder. I become weaker. I get to a point where doing anything feels like a chore. So I have to keep moving all the time. Mental and physical health go hand in hand. So another priority in my life is my mental well-being, my emotions. I attended workshops for stress, anxiety management. I recently had counseling during COVID quarantine. I also practice meditation and mindfulness regularly. It is not that easy at first, but if you press on and you do not try too hard, it gets easier with time. You can be mindful while walking, observing nature, and while eating. If I stop my practice, my mind starts wandering. It works over time. I still to worry about the future, and I don't like that. The simple act of breathing deeply promotes salivary secretion, supports self-nerve growth factor, helps our immune system, reduces stress and inflammation, as Dr. Sundar Balasubramanian found in his research work. Last, I would like to talk about my spiritual life. I found that a deeper way of dealing with stress, anxiety, symptoms, and a way of having a more meaningful life is by living in peace with God, with myself, with others. Practicing meditation, mindfulness, getting closer to nature, and prayer gave me that peace. This is one of the best things that I could have done in my life for myself and my loved ones. I once heard that if you would like to do something for yourself, you should lend someone a hand. And if you would like to do something for others, you should better yourself as a person. Finally, I would like to share that I am grateful to have a mild type of scleroderma, and I do not take medications, although I take supplements to support my nutrition. So, I have the luxury of managing my symptoms with lifestyle, and I do not have to take any risks related to medication or treatment side effects. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity. Blessings to you all.
Thank you so much, Monica, for sharing your thoughts and experiences. And we're now going to move on to Demi. We are having a few audio issues, so we're going to see if Demi's audio is great, and then if not, then we might move on to Anita and come back to Demi. But go ahead, Demi. We'll give you the audio a chance. Do you want to unmute? Yeah, there we go. Go ahead.
Okay. The aspects of my systemic sclerosis that impacts my life the most is the tightening of my skin. Can you hear me?
So it's a little rough. Maybe if we could have you log off like fully and log back in, and we can maybe move to Anita, because I really want to make sure that everybody can hear your experiences and your story, and I'm afraid that with the audio issues, we might not be successful. So Anita, is it okay if we can move to you, and then kind of, Demi, if you don't mind kind of completely logging off and logging back on to see if that will help the audio, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks so much, Anita.
Thank you. As an introduction, my name is Anita Devine, and I was diagnosed with diffuse systemic scleroderma 13 years ago. Professionally, I have a doctorate in pharmacy, which has greatly aided in my knowledge of my disease and my treatments. My disease course has run the gamut of acute renal crisis, in which I was very critically ill, to now having scleroderma as a chronic debilitating disease. So therefore, when I think about treatment, the treatments have changed due to the different types of scleroderma that I have experienced. Currently, my treatments have included medications that will control symptoms only, but unfortunately, they are not curative in intent. My medication list includes high-dose lansoprazole for severe gastric and esophageal reflux, enalapril for renal preservation, sildenafil to increase perfusion and also hopefully aid in pulmonary hypertension, levothyroxine, and PRN opioids for pain. I rarely take them, thank goodness, but I will be discussing that a little bit later. I do have to take a lot of loperamide for my gut. My symptoms are quite severe in my gastrointestinal tract, and there are days that I can hardly leave the house without the loperamide. I also take vitamins. I previously had been on antineoplastic and anti-inflammatory agents to try to stem the course of my disease. However, unfortunately, the disease did not abate. My non-medication treatments have included major hand surgery. There was one major and 15 minor hand surgeries. You can see the effects of it. They were not wonderful, and it was an extremely difficult surgery. I have been on dialysis because of renal failure, which was due to my scleroderma. I elevate my head at night to abate my reflux symptoms. I use heat for localized pain. I have been on frequent bouts of physical therapy. My diet I am on a low sodium diet because of my kidneys, and I exercise as much as possible to maintain whatever lung function I have left. Unfortunately, my current treatment regimen does not affect the progression of my scleroderma. The antidiarrheal medication stops the issue temporarily, but doesn't change the onset of symptoms. And activities of daily living are extremely difficult due to the lack of my gut function. My perfusion is slightly better on sildenafil. I was a failure on other treatments that were given to me, such as calcium channel blockers. I do want to spend a minute on pain control. I do experience quite a bit of pain on a daily basis. And unfortunately, for someone like me who has kidney disease, many options are not available to me. And I am forced to end up taking opioids. And the opioids are a very, very difficult medication to obtain from a physician, as well as you don't want to be on it for long periods of time. So it is a difficult thing to control my pain, and I generally have to try and grin and bear it. Thankfully, I'm on mostly oral medications, and that makes my life a lot easier. But the downsides of my therapy include cumbersome regimens, costs of my therapies, and pain control, as I said before. If I was to choose an ideal treatment for scleroderma, it would include cost-effective therapies for disease and symptom control. The therapies would have low or no toxicities. They would be a simple regimen. Costs would be within reason. And insurance coverage and tier coverage would be acceptable to me. And I also would like to make sure that the therapy is easy to obtain. Sometimes they make you go through hoops to get a medication or other modality, and it's not always easy to obtain meds. The other thing I consider before starting a therapy is the risk-benefit profile of the treatment. I think about various things such as potential value, comparison to other options and therapies that are out there, costs again, side effects again. How severe are those side effects? How is it going to impact my quality of life? And what are the effects on my family? I also want to know, what is the history of the treatment? Has the drug been out for 50 years or has it been out for 6 months? That might make a difference to me. And lastly, if the drug is still investigational, did the trial include patients like me? Did they include patients with my age group, my comorbidities, treatment after the trial has ended? Will there be costs to me in the trial? Testing, test costs? Lastly, is there confidentiality in the trial? I was actually a participant in an investigational study years ago, and the data was compromised, and my confidentiality was breached. And so I would always want to make sure that that never happens again. Now, on a personal level, when treating my disease, I would accept some bothersome side effects if the gain was control of disease progression and increase in overall quality of life. I would be willing to accept some side effects if organ preservation resulted, as this may be the most debilitating issue to me in the long run. I'm also willing to accept different treatments depending on my disease state. When sicker with life-threatening scleroderma symptoms, I might be more willing to take riskier treatments if it improved my chances at survival. Now, during the more chronic phase of my illness, my present status, I would be less willing to accept the more severe or lifelong debilitating treatment. Having a slower chronic decline from the disease, to me, would be preferential to having an acute life-threatening product, which I would have to take. However, if I felt that I could live satisfactorily with the risks that are incurred by the medications, if they were acceptable or treatable risks, I would be willing to take the medications or treatment. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thanks so much, Anita. So let's try and go back to Demi and see if we've resolved our audio issues. Demi?
Yes, can you hear me?
It sounds like we're still kind of dealing with the same audio issues. I wonder if maybe we could figure out a way to maybe have you call in via the phone instead of online, because I think that might be one of the challenges. Sorry about that. Let's move on to Jackie while we continue to work on Demi's audio issues, and we will come back to her. But Jackie, if you wouldn't mind sharing your experiences with us, we'd really appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, so my name is Jackie Latka, and I'm going to start with just a little bit of background so you can understand my story. I was diagnosed with systemic diffuse scleroderma in 2011, and I was put on a medication called Cellcept that I took for about 6 months, with my symptoms continuing to progress. After 6 months, I started having some breathing issues and was diagnosed with some secondary issues: Raynaud's syndrome, interstitial lung disease, and borderline pulmonary hypertension. Not only did I have these secondary issues, but the disease continued to progress and started to make my mobility deteriorate. I could not sit or stand for more than 15 minutes. I could not be in a straight position. My body had to be bent for more than 15 minutes, or it was very painful. I could no longer go upstairs. I used a walker. I was in a wheelchair. I needed assistance with daily tasks that most people take for granted, such as bathing, getting dressed, fixing something for myself to eat, opening a bottle of water. When the disease continued to progress so rapidly, my doctors decided that I should take some chemotherapy Cytoxan infusions. However, nobody could get the IVs in my arms because the skin was so tight. So we moved to a daily oral dose, and I took it for 4 months until I started to get the side effects of the Cytoxan with bladder issues. So at this point, my doctors were kind of at a loss for where to go with me because my disease was progressing so rapidly. I did some research on my own and found a rheumatologist, very well known in the scleroderma community, that I traveled outside of my state to go and see what their recommendation was. And within 10 minutes of being in the office, the recommendation, and the only recommendation she had for me, was a stem cell transplant. So in 2013, I went and had a stem cell transplant as my treatment, and currently continue to be on medications to maintain a status quo of my health and where it is from the transplant and the medications that I've taken over the years. I also take some non-prescriptions like calcium and vitamin D, and do exercises and stuff. My treatment has changed a little bit because of the transplant, just different medications. I still take an immunosuppressant. I still take something for my lungs. I take something for my gastrointestinal and several other medications. I did see improvement in my mobility and in my lungs after my transplant. And I continue to see what I call my baby steps and my new normal to making more positive changes forward from the transplant. I was able to retire my some of my medical equipment, but I still continue to use some smaller equipment and gadget type things like grippers and jar openers, etc. So as I mentioned, my lungs did improve from the transplant. However, they're still in a compromised position, and I do wish that they would get better. And one of the things I would say that is, I guess, just annoys a little bit annoying to me is all the medications that I continue to have to take on a daily basis. But in order for me to maintain my status quo and not have to catch back up with the disease, I continue to take the medications. But I always have the questions of worrying if another medication is introduced, how it would affect me, making sure I don't relapse, and worrying about any new symptoms. In choosing treatments, I take into consideration who's in charge of the treatment, how knowledgeable are they about scleroderma, do I have any other options that I need to research, and what are my healthcare providers and my family recommending to me. And if the treatment were to make a big difference and would improve my symptoms and preserve my organs, I would consider it. I would have to outweigh the risks and the benefits. For example, like I had to do with my transplant. The risk of the transplant was very high. However, in order to save my life and continue living, I felt the option was to do the transplant. In looking at bothersome symptoms and things that are less important to me than are more important, I look at like my hands. My hands are curved like this, like a lot of scleroderma patients, and I can't straighten them. But to me, they're functioning hands. They're normal hands. I'm used to these hands, and I can live my life with these hands. So I wouldn't risk the possibility of doing a surgery to straighten them out and go through the side effects of that surgery. However, if my lungs deteriorated, I would consider a treatment that possibly has risks if for the greater good of me and my lungs, it's going to help and get the lungs better. I think I've had a lot of high-risk treatment in dealing with scleroderma, and I've looked at the benefits and the risks, and that's the main thing that I look at when I look at my condition. If there's a long-term factor, but my life will be much more functioning, then it would be worth it to me. You know, in a perfect world, our treatment would be safe and we'd have positive results or a cure. But I guess I look at all the treatments, and if my scleroderma symptoms started to decline, I would have to weigh all of the options at the time that I'm in, looking at the risk and the benefits of them, and what my healthcare providers would be recommending. So thank you to everyone, and that's a bit about treatment and scleroderma.
Thanks so much, Jackie. I think that I appreciate that, and I appreciate kind of the unique perspective that you bring, having gone through the transplant, and also really kind of your thoughts on risk and benefit. That's really helpful for us to hear, and I think we're going to hear hopefully from more of you on the line about your thoughts and your experiences with treatments as we move forward. Right now we are still working on Debbie's audio, so Susan, if you wouldn't mind us kind of turning to you for your thoughts and your experiences, we would really appreciate that.
Definitely. Again, thank you for having me. So I've had scleroderma for 45 years, and it took 3 years and 3 different countries to finally get a diagnosis. At the time, I didn't fit the standard patient. I was a child, and I was African living in a tropical country. For about 20 years, the scleroderma was in remission, but 3 years ago, things changed, and I had to figure out what I could do to go back to a normal life. Just to lead an ordinary life, all my medications, prescriptions, and over-the-counter meds must be compounded because I have intolerances to the binders and fillers that I now use to make all medications. The food intolerances are a side effect of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And because of this, I develop skin rashes that won't go away, constant nausea, constant aches and pains, and foggy brain episodes. Once I changed my diet and pulled out gluten, dairy, corn, and nightshades, all the symptoms disappeared and my energy levels skyrocketed. To be able to function throughout the day, I must put myself on TPN, total parental nutrition, at night for 10 hours because 70% of my nutrients come from TPN as I can't absorb nutrients. Although TPN has given me life, it also has its downside. I get sepsis infections when the PICC line gets infected. This usually results in a 9-day stay in the hospital. The hospital stay is gruesome because many of the physicians and nurses don't know how to take care of scleroderma patients. I have nutrition limitations, can only eat 4 foods, have medication limitations, so I must bring my own medications, and blood draws need to be limited, otherwise I develop hospital-acquired anemia that's treated with a blood transfusion. Currently, there are minimal treatments for patients with intestinal problems. Once you've gone through the standard treatment, then your rheumatologist and gastroenterologist have to become creative in finding solutions that may work. We need medications that treat the intestinal tract. Those that address SIBO, those that address lack of or limited peristalsis, and those that address lack of absorption. We additionally need medications that address secondary Raynaud's that many of us develop. Although nitric oxide is recommended, it has bad side effects. A less aggressive medication is needed. Many of us scleroderma patients are usually in some type of pain most of the time. So a medication that can lessen that pain and protect our organs would be ideal. One hears of too many stories where some scleroderma treatments result in rare cancers. And we actually have a scleroderma warrior that is currently going through this. In the long term, aggressive treatments that work well and have the potential to damage our organs are not prolonging life or improving on quality of life. They are causing more hardship. We need treatments that work well, protect our organs, and prolong life and quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. I think that that was really very well said, and I think that it's something that we need to think about as a whole, and so I appreciate that. Now we're going to turn back to Demi. We believe we have fixed the audio issues, but of course on the live webcast we can't test it. So we're gonna cross our fingers and hope that third time is the charm. So Demi, if you wanna go ahead, we'll cross our fingers.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, mine's better. The aspects of my systematic sclerosis that impacts my life the most is the tightening of my skin. My skin on my arms, legs, hands, and face are significant. The skin is tightened so much that it causes me to have limited uses of my limbs. I also have Raynaud's, making me extremely sensitive to cold environments. I continue to suffer from digital ulcers, which cover many areas of my body. I also have calcium deposits. Due to all of these issues, I now suffer from anxiety. Before being diagnosed in 2001, I was a very active person. Now I'm unable to walk for long periods of time. I no longer can put on socks, comb my hair, or open up items. My left hand is contracted and my right hand has 3 partial amputations. My feet hurt constantly and I've had 1 toe removal. All of this has greatly limited my activities. On my best days, I'm still unable to complete simple tasks like eating without adaptive equipment. I still need a lot of assistance, which can be very frustrating. On my worst days, the fatigue is overwhelming. I'm so tired I literally can't get up and take care of my daughter. I'm forced to call family in to make sure my child eats and to stay entertained. Over time, my scleroderma has gotten worse. I now mainly focus on dealing with the calcinosis, which is extremely painful and uncomfortable. I don't have as many complications that cause me to lose digits anymore. It seems my body is at a point where it is adjusting to the trauma it has experienced. I have learned coping mechanisms that seem to be working for me. I've had scleroderma since 2001, but I still can't define my symptoms as being well managed. I just learned tricks to make it tolerable. The issue of premature death concerns me the most about systematic sclerosis. If I could change one aspect of the disease, it would be the loss of my digits. I would like to have all my fingers and toes. The loss of my fingers has been a traumatic event for me and has caused me to suffer from depression. That I now have to be treated for. To treat my scleroderma, I currently use several medications that only are preventative. For example, Norvasc. It's prescribed to me to make sure my esophagus isn't damaged. I also use non-drug therapies and over-the-counter products. One product that I find the most helpful is Vaseline. I also use chair yoga to relax and stretch my limbs. My treatment regimen has changed over time a lot. I used to take every medication a physician prescribed, but I only found that my doctors were experimenting and are not sure what can help me. Some of the meds caused me to suffer so much that I began picking and choosing which ones that works best for me. I no longer trust physicians as much. Now I ask more questions and advocate for my healthcare plan. The symptoms I would like to be improved or resolved by treatment is the skin tightening. The severe lack of blood flow causes more symptoms like the loss of my teeth. Right now, the only treatment that improves my abilities to do specific activities is pain management. When I'm not in pain, I'm able to function more normally in everyday activities. I'm able to participate, which is more of an enjoyable life. The significant downsides are planning my life around doctor's appointments, surgeries, and home care visits. My ideal treatment would be to take 5 or less prescription medications to qualify for more clinical trial opportunities. Also having 1 or 2 physicians trained and capable of conducting the majority of my care, instead of me having to see several different doctors. Facts I consider when selecting treatment options are the physician's reviews, the medication reviews, and the side effects. Also, my personal feelings of the results after treatment. Another extremely important consideration is the physician's bedside manners. When I think about treatment risk and treatment risk and improving my symptoms, I would like to preserve my organ functions. That would be worth the risk. But I'm not willing to have a treatment with cancer-associated risk. If I had to choose between 2 products, I would prefer a safe product that works somewhat, giving me some levels of rural relief. On a lighter note, I'm surviving with a smile on my face and a determination to be an enjoyable person and have an enjoyable life. And I want to thank you for listening and thank the FDA for hosting a public meeting.
Wow, great. Thank you so much, Demi, and thanks for your flexibility as we kind of troubleshoot the audio issues. So as you guys can hear, these were all some really compelling and diverse experiences, both with treatments and with the scleroderma systemic sclerosis. And I want to thank all of our panelists, Monica, Anita, Jackie, Susan, and Demi, for sharing them. And so as I mentioned before, the discussion questions for this session, our first discussion questions to the groups are: what are you currently doing to treat your systemic sclerosis? How has your treatment regimen changed over time, and why? And what symptoms would you like to see most improved or resolved by treatment? And so so right now, I don't think that we have anybody on the line. So let me take a moment and turn to the FDA panelists to see if they had any follow-up questions for our patient panelists. Is there anything from the FDA perspective that you wanted to clarify or maybe follow up on?
Hi, Robin. This is Nikolai.
Hello.
Do you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
Again, thank you everyone for sharing your stories. Again, this is pretty much what we wanted to hear. And I think the purpose of this afternoon topic is mostly to think about how to think about the benefits and the risks of therapies for systemic sclerosis. And I wanted to probe a little bit some of the comments that were shared and ask the group for new products that we may not know about their long-term potential benefits, say for disease modification or for slowing the progression of the disease. You know, it's possible that based on the mechanism of action and understanding, it may impact the mechanism of action. The question is how much safety or toxicity would you be willing to take with a product like this? For example, if it causes cancer also, or if it causes heart disease or, you know, cardiovascular disease down the road. So these are some of the uncertainties that we have that we would want you to share with us how you think about products like this.
So Jackie, you want to kick it off?
Sure, I can add that it would depend on my health at the time. So for instance, one of the things that my rheumatologist had me take when my disease was progressing so aggressively was the chemotherapy Cytoxan that does have a side effect of cancer. And in looking at the cancer, you know, it's going to be a possibility and not necessarily a yes that you're going to for sure get it. So I think I would, you know, at the time of my disease and where I was sitting, it was really more of a answer of, if I don't try this, I'm probably not going to live. So at that point, the benefit of possibly getting the cancer was a small side effect for where I was at with my disease.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Let's just kind of go in the order I see on my screen with Susan and then Anita, and then if Monica or Demi wants to add anything, we'll go there. So go ahead.
So actually when I was younger, my scleroderma was pretty bad. And I was diagnosed and treated in England. That's where I was first diagnosed. And so they did give me a medication that was part of a cancer treatment. It was called chlorambucil at the time. But they had to monitor me very closely because, again, I was still a child and I was still growing. And so at that time, because, again, I was progressing fast, that was the only option they had at the time. So I'm kind of conflicted with this right now. So the scleroderma has kind of come back now after 20 years. I think at this point in my life, I wouldn't risk taking something that could additionally cause cancer. And you hear a lot of these stories happening. As I had mentioned in my notes, we do have someone who's going through that right now. But I think with the advances that have been taking place, I'm confident scientists can find alternatives that are less risky, and that will prolong life and give a better quality of life.
Great, thank you. Anita?
I would say that if the treatment is going to cause me more problems and more severe problems and mortality issues, that I would be reticent to take it. Right now, living with scleroderma is not easy, but I'm living. And so I think that, you know, to say that I might have such cardiac effects that my heart might be severely compromised, or that my kidneys will completely fail, they're close to that now, I don't know that I would be willing to accept that. So that's pretty much my personal feeling.
Great, thank you. And I don't know, Demi,
I would like to echo on that.
The audio issue seems to be back a little bit. I'm sorry.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. I would like to kind of echo with Anita. I also wouldn't want to have extra trauma done to me. My body's already went through enough. I don't feel like it would be necessary to try something that would just make it worse. So that's pretty much what I want to say.
Great. And Monica, I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't have, I know you kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier, but if you have anything else to add, I want to give you the opportunity.
Well, you know, when I was recently diagnosed, I tried a couple of medications and the side effects were horrible. And so at that point, I decided to try without them, and thank God I'm still being able to do it. So I really cannot contribute much in terms of medication, but thank you.
I would like to add one thing, and that is if the side effects were treatable, I'd be more willing to take a risk. So I think that's an important thing to say.
Thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts. I mean, we get the impression that these are not easy decisions to make for patients or for prescribers, but this is sort of a mutual decision, and I think we on our end also have to think about how to incorporate these considerations in how we assess the benefits and the risks of treatments. Thank you so much for sharing.
Great, thank you. And let me turn to Shannon to get, I think we have one comment in from someone who's submitted a comment online. And so let me maybe have her share that comment, and then we'll turn back, because I think we might have a few other questions from our FDA panelists. So Shannon, do you want to share the one comment that we've got so far?
Sure, thanks, Robin. So we did receive one comment from a patient who was describing the treatments that they are currently using. So they're using a variety of medications for GERD, high blood pressure, severe Raynaud's, digital ulcers, and some neuropathy pain. And they try not to take some of these medications because the side effects are not being able to sleep, itching, but sometimes the side effects are better than being in pain. They've also tried Botox and have also used a hyperbaric chamber several times to help with amputations, heal, and some laser light therapy, which seems to also help the pain and ulcers to heal. And they also stress that their treatment regimen can change according to their symptoms, so it may not be the same thing every day.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. I know that we do have some more questions from our FDA panelists, but I'm going to get everybody kind of, I don't want to say up and moving, because answering a polling question is not really aerobic activity, but let's turn briefly to the polling questions to get some feedback from those of you who are online. Again, polling kind of remains limited to the participants who have lived experiences with systemic sclerosis or scleroderma, either personal experience or as a family member or loved ones. And to our panelists who are participating still for the meeting, please feel free to pick up your cell phones or your other browser window and share your responses with us as well. And so this is where you're going to find my embarrassing ability to pronounce medications. So have you ever used any of the following, sorry, I just want to make sure all right. So have you ever used any of the following interventions or medical products, drug therapies, or medical devices to treat your systemic sclerosis? And you can check all that apply for this one. And so the first are medications to modify blood flow, such as nifedipine. This B is medications that suppress the immune system to prevent organ rejection or to treat arthritis, such as cyclosporin or azathioprine. C is antifibrotic medications for interstitial lung disease, such as nintedanib. D, corticosteroids for skin and arthritis symptoms such as prednisone. E, proton pump inhibitors for digestive symptoms such as omeprazole. F, painkillers such as Vicodin, Percocet, OxyContin. G, bone marrow or solid organ transplant. H, other medical products or interventions not mentioned. Or I, I'm not using any medical products or interventions. So I'm going to be honest. That was the question I was worried about all day for my pronunciation. So apologies if I got those wrong. All right, so looking at this, and it is a little bit difficult to see, which is why you can see that we kind of shortened the answers on the survey question. So it looks like the medications to modify blood flow is kind of 22% of people. Medications to suppress the immune system, about 10%. 2% are using those antifibrotic medications for interstitial lung disease. We have steroids at about 17%, proton pump inhibitors for digestive symptoms, the omeprazole and such, at 19%, 14% for painkillers, not a huge number of people with bone marrow or solid organ transplant, and we have 15% of people using others or other medical products or interventions not mentioned. And that is helpful for us to know, and we will get in our next polling question that we're not going to quite yet, we will get to kind of questions about about physical therapy and diet modifications and counseling and other therapies and over-the-counter medications and things like that. So, but right now, this is just really to kind of give us an idea of the treatments that are being used. And I think that actually kind of leads us right into one of the questions that one of our FDA panelists had. About let me turn to Dr. Glazer because I think you had some questions about GI symptoms and maybe meaningful improvement.
Let's see if I can get both audio and video at the same time. So I will echo my colleagues in thanking all of you for taking the time to speak to us today and describe your experiences living with systemic sclerosis. One thing that we've heard quite a bit about today, I think, are the different GI manifestations from different panel members. So I was wondering what GI manifestations would be most important to develop treatments for, and then sort of the Part B question to that is what would be a meaningful improvement in those symptoms for you?
Well, do you want me to start?
Oh, sorry. I was having a great conversation that was deep and profound with myself because I forgot to unmute. So apologies for that. Yes, if you want to, Anita, if you want to kick it off, and then we'll move on to Susan, who I know touched on this during her talk as well. But go ahead. Thank you.
I think a lot of the issues that have been discussed are esophageal reflux, difficulty swallowing, the problems with atony of the gut, and overgrowth of bacteria, and all of those resultant in diarrhea that are so severe that it can be debilitating. So all of those things would be of interest to me personally in finding some things that would be beneficial. I would love that. The musculature in the gut is so impaired that that's another issue that hopefully that could be alleviated as well. Thank you.
Great. And before I have Susan kind of launch into that, so Anita, would you maybe tell us or maybe give us an idea of what you think would be an improvement? What would be a meaningful improvement that would make it worth kind of taking a medication maybe on a daily basis or something like that? I mean, obviously, absent the ability to stop the problems altogether, what would you think would be kind of a meaning, like a decrease of like 50% in the reflux, or like reflux only on 50% of days, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just kind of thinking about what would be a goal for treatment that you would think, okay, this is worth kind of taking.
You know, we do have some treatments now, but part of the problem is, you know, the proton pump inhibitors do help a little bit with the reflux. However, the side effects long term are scaring me, and so we're taking very high doses. So you know, when I step down therapy and I try to decrease doses, the reflux is untenable. So basically, I'd be looking for something, even if it was a 50% decrease, as Robin said, or 50% of daily episodes. I mean, that would be meaningful to me. I'd be thrilled. I'd be also looking for something that doesn't have the, you know, the long-term side effects that, you know, have been reported, most recently type 2 diabetes on these proton pump inhibitors, and, you know, all kinds of other issues that have been reported in the literature over the years on high-dose proton pump therapies. So yeah, I would love to see some new therapies. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Susan, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I would definitely like to see treatments for the intestinal tract. Currently, there are really no treatments for the intestinal tract. For SIBO, there's a series of 5 antibiotics you can go through to get the gas down due to the SIBO. But once you've gone through those medications, you know, several times, and then they stop working, there really isn't anything else that can be done. So your rheumatologist and your gastroenterologist need to work together to kind of finesse and figure out what else can work for you. So we definitely need medications for the intestinal tract. Tablets or anything else that can get that gas down, you know, 50%, that would be great. And then also we have lack of absorption. So I have that. 70% of my nutrition is coming from TPN. TPN pretty much saved my life. Other rheumatologists couldn't figure out what I had, but my rheumatologist at UCLA, who's a specialist in scleroderma, figured that out. And that's how I ended up on TPN. Otherwise, I really would have I had already lost 50 pounds. And I don't think I would be here telling you my story if he wasn't thinking about that. So we also need medication that can help with absorption for those of us who can't absorb any nutrients. So those are my points.
Great, thank you. Did anybody else want to comment?
I would like to say something about this. Thank you, Robin. My point of view is from the holistic type of treatment. I do see doctors regularly, and I make sure that I'm doing all the testing in time. But at the same time, my focus is a lot on lifestyle. And it is interesting. We have this parasympathetic nervous system, which is also called the rest and digest system. And this is the one that strengthens our immunity. Before my diagnosis, I was working 2 jobs and going to school. And I literally never stopped Monday through Sunday. And so, you know, after scleroderma, I started to value my sleep and to have some more of a peaceful life. And my digestive problems improved a lot. And there's many tricks that I've learned regarding diet. I observe my diet very closely. But for instance, there are foods that I eat and give me heartburn. And I found out that if I eat something that gives me heartburn in an empty stomach or without any other foods, then I have more problems. But I got to understand more my body and learn that if I have this together with this other type of food, and usually it's funny, but I end up combining protein and veggies and carbs. And if I get a balance that my body likes of these 3 different types of foods, then my heartburn goes way down, almost to nothing. So that can also help. Antibiotics. I did try antibiotics for CWAT first. The problem with antibiotics is that they kill the bad guys and the good guys in your gut biome. So it's a double-edged sword, and I try to avoid them every time I can.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's helpful, and I think that it sounds like you're going to have a lot to kind of add to when we get to our next polling question that does talk about kind of the more the non-medical or non-medication kind of based treatments. So at this point, I'd like to kind of turn to Shannon and see if she can give us kind of a summary or an overview of the comments that we're receiving from those of you who are participating and providing comments through the web comments. Also, this would be a great opportunity for me to put in a plug for those of you who would like to give us a call and kind of share your thoughts to do so. So let me turn to Shannon. Shannon?
Thank you, Robin. So we are getting several comments about treatment options that participants are using. One participant said they're using Flolan and Bellatree infusion for Raynaud's and a high blood pressure medicine for blood flow. They're also using Cymbalta for nerve pain and depression, as well as Botox injections for Raynaud's in their hands. A few participants also mentioned proton pump inhibitors, and one of them said that the fact that proton pump inhibitors inhibit the absorption of calcium is a huge issue for women. A way to have a treatment with proton pump inhibitors without the side effects of less calcium absorption would be great. We also received a comment from someone who is using GI systems and strategies to deal with fecal incontinence, and some other recommended lifestyle adaptations. In addition to medications, one participant listed they do not eat late at night, they have some dietary changes and are doing their best to keep their core as well as extremities warm from Raynaud's. And in their current condition, they would be wary of a long-term medication that dramatically increase their chances of cancer or cardiovascular issues. But if they were in a bad situation, their viewpoint on that may change.
Thanks so much, Shannon. That was helpful, and thank you to all of you who are providing comments via the web. At this point, I'd kind of like to, we're gonna take a little bit of a turn, and I'm gonna go back to something that we heard a little bit earlier in the day from our first panelist, which is really the challenges of dealing with kind of fatigue. And we heard it from you guys as well. There's a lot of fatigue that comes with this. And so let me turn to one of our FDA panelists, Dr. Hull, to really kind of to ask a question that I think we're all kind of interested in hearing your thoughts on. So Dr. Hull?
Yeah, hi. I'd also like to start by thanking all of the panelists for joining today. This has been very helpful from our point of view for reviewing. One thing that we commonly review in a lot of different applications, including scleroderma, is fatigue. And we hear a lot about patients' fatigue. But one of the problems we have is, how do you assess fatigue? Someone just saying you're better. So my question to you, and it's been a common theme for all the patients, is how do you assess fatigue? For instance, is it every day you're kind of running at half battery, you're half full, or is it come in waves, it's only a couple of days out of the week? And if you were in a clinical trial, how would you assess that? Would it be, a questionnaire? Is it, how do you feel from day to day? Do you think you'd benefit from how you feel looking back at a week? Just to get us an idea, so that if we could do something as serious as fatigue, that we could see that there was a clinically meaningful improvement in it, because we also have to balance out the risks.
So if you, Anita, I see you unmuted. So so I'm assuming that means you'd like to answer the question. So we really appreciate your thoughts on this.
I do suffer from chronic fatigue. It is a daily issue. I fight it tooth and nail as best I can. I try to be strong about it, but you know what? The fatigue and scleroderma, it's like you hit a brick wall. I'm a type A personality. I've always been extremely busy, and the scleroderma has caused such problems for me that just about I'm done. And, I would like to be able to say that, I would have a longer day, not fatigued. I would like to wake up, not tired. I would like to feel rested after I eat. None of that occurs for me. And I imagine it's probably prevalent among the rest.
Great. Thanks, Anita. I'm not sure if you're still speaking. I'm finding I think you're having a little bit of an audio issue and you're a little frozen. So so I'm going to move on to, I think Susan has unmuted and is going to speak, and we'll come back to you if you have anything else to say after Susan is done. So Susan?
Yes. So I go through bouts of tiredness. So kind of go through what everybody is saying. You can sleep for 10 hours, but then wake up tired. And you're dragging throughout the whole day. From morning, lunch, dinner, at night, you're just dragging throughout the whole day. And so I used to have this most of the time for a whole week. So it can come on and off. For me, it used to be part of my diet, so I've changed that. But I know with scleroderma, you can have really bad fatigue. And I've experienced that as well. So I think, you're talking about in a clinical trial and how you can measure that meaningfully. I think assess it during a whole week and see how people feel, or have them describe what they're going through when they're going through the fatigue. So it isn't just regular fatigue. I mean, you're really drained. Your whole body is drained. Even just going to get something to eat from the kitchen, that is draining to do. So everything you're doing is draining. I hope that made sense.
I just want to add one other question on this. Is there a subjective difference between fatigue and the brain fog that you mentioned, or is that a kind of a combination of the two?
Oh, no, there's different. Brain fog, you can definitely see that one. That's when you can't think, okay, I didn't say that correctly, but you have difficulty thinking, so cognitive function is going to be down, and then trying to put concepts together, that is hard to do. So yeah, brain fog is definitely different from fatigue. And also with the brain fog, you can forget what you were doing and not remember why you're doing what you're doing. So if you're working in a work environment, that's very challenging to do, to keep your work going and think appropriately at the tasks that you're asked to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Anita, I want to kind of circle back to you and see if you had anything else to add, or if you had completed your thoughts when I lost your audio.
Did you say Anita? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes.
Okay. I guess the one thing I would add for Dr. Hull is that when you're trying to measure outcomes and whether or not something's actually helped, I guess I'd be looking at the amount of fatigue that you experience daily, and are you able to accomplish the things that you have set out to accomplish? In other words, quality of daily living. have you been able to have acceptable quality of living, which was ameliorated because you had less fatigue. So that would be major to me.
Thanks, Anita. That was really helpful. Did anybody else want to add something, Monica?
Yes. In my case, I find that both happen at the same time. Many times when I wake up tired and I am tired all day long, at night it's unsustainable. And that's when I have brain fog, and I can't talk. I can't find words. I can't think clear. It's really bad. I cannot stand without holding myself on a chair, on a table, sometimes on walls because I get dizzy. So it's really bad.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Hall, I don't know if you want to circle around or?
No, thank you all for those answers. That was great.
Great, thank you. And so Shannon, I wanted to turn to you because I think that we're getting some comments from our online participants. I guess everybody's online, but from online comments about this. Did you want to share a little bit with us?
Yeah, so we are receiving some comments online about the brain fog and fatigue, and one participant phrased it as brain fog is when you know the answer, but you can't access it. And another participant mentioned they measure fatigue in spoons, so the spoon theory. They never know until they wake up how much energy they'll have for the entire day, and their energy can tank out at any time. Sometimes this is from physical activity, some of this is from overstimulation, some of it is from emotional fatigue, and some of it is anxiety related. And this participant usually expects that after a doctor's appointment they will need to rest. They said that antidepressants can help reduce fatigue and cut through brain fog a little bit, but never completely.
Great, thank you. And so I wanted now to turn to the phone, and I think we have two callers on the phone who want to share some experiences with us. Let's start with Noel, and I'm not sure whether you're from Los Angeles or Louisiana, but we'll start with you, and then we'll move on. So thanks so much for calling us.
Hi, my name is Noel, and I am from Los Angeles. I went from diagnosis with diffuse systemic scleroderma to a autologous homeopathic stem cell transplant in 5 months. I was progressing aggressively, and about 2.5 years after my transplant, I had a severe allergic reaction to an injectable migraine medicine. That put me into kind of a tailspin that I'm in right now, and I am progressing once again. I am a mother with 5 kids, 4 young kids still at home. I know I've listened to some panelists, and I know a lot of them have talked about they're a little less, they're hesitant to have more risk, but as a young mom, especially with a child that I have that has a rare disease himself, with only about 350 diagnosed cases in the U.S., I need to be around for my kids. I need to be around for my family. And so, I've had scleroderma renal crisis. I have interstitial lung disease. I've got the neuropathic pain now that's turned on. That's just extremely painful and making everyday living very difficult. But I'm willing to take risks if there's a medicine out there or if there's something in the pipeline that's coming, even if it has more risk than what others might be hesitant to do. So my questions out there is, besides, the CellCept, the Rituxan, the Cytoxan, is there anything else out there that will slow the progression of this disease? Thank you for allowing me to share.
And thank you for calling in. And I think that's a great question. And so now we're gonna move on to a caller from San Diego, Christina. Yes, Christina, so that she can share some of her experiences as well. I think we're talking about brain fog and pain, right, Christina?
Yes, yeah. So I was actually the one that sent in the comment about spoon theory, and it's like, you know, every day we would think that we would start the day with a certain amount of energy. Unfortunately, we never know. And so someone actually created this a while ago where they say, like, using up a certain amount of energy, we call that a spoon. And so there will be days that we get to where we've used up all of our energy. It might only be 3 o'clock, and that's it. You know, we are down for the rest of the day. But something else that I say is that aside from brain fog, there's also pain fog and pain insomnia. So, you know, I spent last year, I've been diagnosed for about 14 months now. I spent most of last year with pericarditis. I had 5 hospital stays. The medical bills are out of control. That is one thing. Like, we do need care that is not going to bankrupt us all, you know, and that's really what's hard and heartbreaking about living here in the United States. But like you know, I was in and out of the hospital for most of last year with cardiac issues before we even found out that I had scleroderma, like before that diagnosis even came in. And I didn't realize because, you know, I was trying so hard to keep up my life. Like, I was an audiologist. I was trying so hard to make it to work every day that's what our entire household revolved around, was getting me to and from work for those 8 hours. And part of it is because that's where my insurance was coming from. And also because I loved my job, I loved my patients. And so, you know, I look back and I honestly don't, there's a lot of days that are very fuzzy, I'll put it that way. There are a lot of days that pain level is so high that if you look back at it a year later, you're like, I don't know. I just don't know. And some of that comes from the brain fog. Some of that comes from the pain. I think the pain also can result in mood changes. So you can end up being a lot shorter with people and irritable with people when normally that's not your personality and that's not how you are. And that's a really hard thing to experience too, because you don't want this condition to change who you are as a person at your core. And I think, you know, spending that time being mindful and meditating and being, you know, outside as much as you're able, or spending time with friends and loved ones and your support system is really important to keep those changes from happening. The other problem is pain insomnia. So when you are in so much pain that it keeps you from sleeping. And that's something that, you know, it's really hard to regulate. And now it's not very common that I get through a day without a nap, you know, and that's not something that's conducive to working an 8-hour workday in most jobs. Like, I'm 35, you know, and so the expectation is, oh yeah, you're going to be at work, you know, and that's not the reality. And especially now with COVID, like, I had to resign from my job because I'm too high risk. And there were no provisions made for those of us with scleroderma and other high-risk conditions for how are we going to support you and help you through this by the government. And I think that part for me was really upsetting. Like, everybody that is high risk is not necessarily over 65. There are high-risk people that they don't have diabetes, they don't have high blood pressure. You know, there are other forms of high risk, and I think more people need to recognize that and recognize that this is a disabling disease. It's rare, and it is very difficult to live with, as all of our panelists have explained. And it can come on fast and hard, and you don't know what is going on until it's already set in. And that takes a while to wrap your head around and accept. And so there needs to be a lot more support. And I think doing things like this panel are wonderful so you all can understand our day-to-day is extremely difficult. And we need more people to know that and help accommodate that, because that is going to keep us in more of a social model of disability as opposed to just the medical model of disability. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think what you're speaking to is really what we're all kind of, I mean, for those of us who are not patients with systemic sclerosis, and maybe those of us who are not experts in the field, and I would clearly put myself in that. I'm not one of the reviewers from the medical division. I think what you're stating is really what's becoming very clear to those of us who are not experts, which is you guys are doing an amazing job kind of getting through the days, trying to, like, with not letting us see all of the challenges of this disease. But it's really becoming, I mean, it's obvious that this condition has huge implications for you and the quality of your life and how you're able to get through your days. And so I really thank you guys all for calling in and kind of sharing these experiences with us, as well as our panelists who are really kind of setting the stage for everybody. At this point, I would like to turn to Dr. Schreiber, from one of our FDA panelists, who I think she wanted to ask a question. And so let me turn to her and go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. And I want to echo what all of my colleagues have said from the FDA, just to thank the panelists for participating. This is very informative. So I know we heard from Noelle and Jackie, who had shared their experiences with stem cell transplantation, but it didn't appear as though any of the other respondents to the poll had reported transplant as a medication option they'd undergone. And I was curious as to the reason for this. Is because it hasn't come up in the discussions with your rheumatologists, either because they didn't know that it was an option, or because your disease state wasn't severe enough, or if it had been presented to you as an option, is it something that you didn't want to pursue or even consider because the benefit-risk profile didn't seem sufficiently favorable to you? Thank you so much.
So let me ask people who are online, if you have comments on this, please give us a call or type in your comments. And now let me turn to our panelists and see if any of you who have not undergone a transplant have any thoughts and want to share any of your thoughts on that. Again, you certainly don't have to share thoughts if you don't want to, but if you have thoughts, please let us know. Debbie, did you unmute? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I am muted.
Okay,
I have not undergone that treatment. The reason why I didn't undergo that treatment is because I've heard from other people, it's like a 50-50, where some people it helps, some people it doesn't help. And because I'm already in enough pain, I didn't want to risk putting myself in a situation where I could have additional pain or additional complications. So I didn't even attempt to try to get it.
Great, thank you. Did anybody else have any thoughts?
Can I just add one thing also on that, even though I've had one? So I had mentioned, so I have local doctors here, local rheumatologists, and they were very much against me getting the transplant because I had mentioned it to them as an option. And then when I did go see the other doctor in another state, and that was the only option she gave me, they were a bit more open to it, but very, very leery of it because of the mortality rate at the time. And one other thing too is I think that, or at least what I have been told, and in my research what I've found out is there are certain requirements that you have to have in order to get the transplant. I don't know specifics on all of the requirements, but at least one for myself was your DLCO of your lungs could not go below 40% in order for you to survive the transplant.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Before we move on to the polling questions, let me just stop and say, is there anything anyone else would like to add, or else we'll move on to our next set of polling questions. So All right, so it looks like for those of you online who have thoughts on this, whether it's why you chose a transplant or why you didn't choose a transplant, if you want to share those with us in the comments, or maybe if you feel open to talking about that as part of your submission to the federal docket, we would appreciate that. But now we're going to move on to our next polling question. So, and we're going to do two somewhat in kind of rapid succession, because we are coming kind of up on the tail end of our meeting, and I want to get kind of everybody's thoughts on these. So the first question is, for medical products or interventions that you use. Wait, sorry. Okay, sorry, I skipped one, sorry. Okay, besides the medical products or interventions mentioned previously, what else are you doing to manage your systemic sclerosis? And this is also a check all that apply, with A being over-the-counter medications such as ibuprofen or acetaminophen, B, lotions or moisturizers, C, physical therapy and exercise, D, diet modifications such as the keto diet, the paleo diet, vegan diet, etc. E, counseling or psychological treatment, F, other therapies not mentioned, or G, I'm not taking any therapies to manage my systemic sclerosis or scleroderma. And so let me see. Okay, and I think this looks to be pretty consistent with what we've heard so far from our panelists and from our callers, as far as both using over-the-counter medications and moisturizers, the physical therapy and exercise, as well as dietary modifications. And I know we listed very specific diets, and I know that from what we've heard today, it sounds like everybody kind of has found the diet that works for them, and it might be a hybrid of multiple different diets that really kind of works for them. But it looks like we are seeing a lot of use of the over-the-counter medications, moisturizing, physical therapy, diet modifications, some counseling or psychological treatment, and then some other therapies not mentioned. And so let me turn to Shannon and see, Shannon, do we have any comments about kind of the other therapies?
Yes, so we did receive one comment from a participant who's using other therapies and listed a few, such as a warm water therapy pool, massage, pelvic floor therapy, water aerobics, building a strong support system, having a different mental outlook, and kind of taking quality over quantity, asking for help when they need it, learning to let things go, yoga and stretching, and cuddle time.
Excellent, thank you. And so now let's move on just kind of to the next polling question, which is, for the medical products or interventions that you use, what about the treatment bothers you the most? And admittedly, this is kind of a leading question because we're asking you what bothers you. Obviously, there are benefits to the treatments, or you would not be using them. But in this case, we're just trying to figure out what are the things that are the things that bother you the most. And you can choose up to 3 answers for that. And with A being how the medication is administered, such as a topical cream, an injection, or an oral medication. B, the treatment only provides minimal benefit. C, the treatment is effective only for a short term. D, bothersome side effects of the treatment. E, concerns about serious risks of the treatment. F, uncertainty about long-term effects of treatment. G, difficulty in accessing the treatment, such as insurance or physician referral. Or H, other negative impacts not mentioned. Okay. And so looking here, it seems like the majority of challenges are that the treatment provides minimal benefit, the side effects can be bothersome, and there's some concerns about the risk of the treatment. And of course, we have heard from people who have called in already today, and from our panelists about some of the challenges. Did we lose a response? Okay, so looks like maybe we lost one of the responses, but but that's okay. This will still give us a good good information. It still looks like the treatment only provides minimal benefit, and the concerns about the serious side effects are helpful to helpful for us to know. And so I don't know if anybody wants to give us a call and kind of share some thoughts with us about this, or maybe share some comments online. I know we are coming up to the end of the meeting, and I did want to kind of move this into kind of our final polling question, which is really a hypothetical scenario. And we've talked a lot about this, but I think that it would be helpful for us to just kind of put this all into context and kind of wrap everything that we've talked about during this session today into this final hypothetical scenario. And I think that I have to read the entire hypothetical scenario to you. Oh no, I don't. Excellent. So I will read it, but it looks like we wanted to put a lot of text, and again we found out we had some technological challenges with that. So here's the hypothetical scenario. So imagine that a new self-injectable medication indicated to treat systemic sclerosis has recently been approved by FDA. Your doctor believes that you may be a good candidate for this medication. In the clinical trials that were conducted, the medication was shown to reduce the symptom that most significantly impacts your daily life when injected once weekly. More common side effects of this therapy may include headache, diarrhea, nausea, stomach or abdominal pain, and weight loss. Rarer but more serious side effects may include infections, seizures, trouble breathing, fever, general feeling of discomfort or illness, and risk of bleeding. And so given these risks, would you take this medication? And so your options are yes, no, and maybe. And so I think that one of the things that I want to kind of ask about is, does your acceptance of potential safety risks go up with potential effectiveness of the product? And so okay, so we're seeing that about, I'm just going to give it a second because I know there is that 20-second delay in getting the responses. But we're seeing that about half of the people, give or take, are on the yes side, maybe about all right, so it's flip-flopping between yes and maybe. We don't have some absolute no's, and I think that's really helpful for us to understand. And I think that Susan really kind of touched on this earlier, because I think we're talking about, are we treating symptoms, or are we actually you know, is this gonna work on symptoms, or is this going to actually work on the disease itself? And so I think that might kind of impact the decision as well. So let me kind of turn to our panelists and maybe ask a quick question right as we're kind of wrapping up, which is, like, can you guys share with me any idea of what an ideal treatment might look like for you? What would an ideal treatment kind of be? Would it be something oral? Would it be something IV? Would it be something that you took once a month or once a day? What would it treat? Maybe just give us a little idea of, absent a cure, which of course would be wonderful, but what would an ideal treatment kind of look like? I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on that you haven't already shared. Demi, go ahead.
For me, once a week or once a month treatment would be good. That would help. I have a family, so I'm constantly on the move and constantly have to be active, and I volunteer a lot. So I would like something that would be convenient. The easier the better. If I could self-administrate, it'd be better. Going to the doctor's office, having another appointment would not be something that I'd be looking to do, but I would do it. As long as it didn't have anything that would be like a fatal result from the treatment, I would be willing to take it.
Great, thank you. Anita?
I would be looking, if possible, to an oral medication. I think that many of us with scleroderma have very bad veins, and IVs are pretty traumatic for us. So that is an issue, as well as the fact that you have to go in to get the IV, an inconvenience. I'd also be looking at the regimen. Is it multiple times a day? Is it once a day? Because that does impact compliance and ability to really be successful. So that's my thought.
Great, thank you. Susan?
I'm open to medication, tablets, and now that I've been with the PICC line for 4 years, I'm open with infusion as well. Again, if that can be self-administered at home, I have to clean my PICC line every day, twice a day. I would be open for that.
Great, thank you. So can I'm going to go a little off script here, but it would just be helpful for me to know, because I don't know, I didn't talk about this, but I'm a nurse, and so I was wondering, when you guys have talked about the IVs and the difficulty of getting IVs and things, do you experience the same degree of difficulty or similar degrees of difficulty when you're getting just a regular blood draw, or is the IV really the more challenging? And so I just go ahead.
Really, it's just any of it. The blood draws, sometimes I have to get stuck 5 times. Sometimes my veins won't allow the tubing to go through because of the tightening. So it's any of it. So it's not necessarily just one way, it's both ways. I don't even like to go get my blood drawn anymore. I try to have them do all tests at one time so that I don't have to be subject to that kind of pain again.
No, thank you. And I think that that's really something that we as people are designing clinical trials, and obviously there needs to be monitoring for safety and things like that. But your comment about kind of trying to cluster the blood draws, or so that they're really as few as possible, really, I mean, it kind of resonates with me, and so I hope that it resonates with some of the rest of the people watching as well, because I think that this is where we have the opportunity to hopefully do our best to make things as simple as possible for people who are participating in research and things like that. So let me, as kind of let me first of all thank all of you so much for your thoughts and your feedback. And I want to turn in the last moments, and I know I've gone a few minutes over, so I apologize, to Shannon, who has a few more comments from online, and then we will turn to Dr. Nair for his closing remarks. So Shannon?
Yeah, so we have received a few comments about this hypothetical scenario, and one participant said that they are willing to try a new drug as long as they can stop taking it if the side effects outweigh the symptom management. And another participant mentioned that tablets are a challenge with sclerodactyl hands. And then another participant mentioned that they would appreciate if the treatment decreased or minimized their fibrosis, and that would be what they would look for in an ideal treatment. We actually just got another comment about your question, Robin, for the blood draw, and this participant said a simple blood draw for me is fine, but when a longer-term IV is needed, they've had to have a guided wire IV, which is horrible, and they ask for an ultrasound guided, usually from the IV team.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Shannon. And again, thank you to our FDA panelists who are here, and to our, of course, our patient panelists, both for the first and second session. and to, again, Shannon and Lena, who have done all of the work behind the scenes while I've been on this camera. So let me turn this over now to Dr. Nair, who is going to provide us with some closing remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to share closing remarks of what we heard today. The perspectives and insights you have shared allow me to approach my role with a better idea of the complex needs of the scleroderma patient community. We from the FDA are often tasked with review of different measurements to assess scleroderma disease activity in studies to evaluate treatments for scleroderma. It is critical for us to better understand the patient perspective when assessing the outcomes for systemic sclerosis that appropriately capture the patient's perspective. Scleroderma is a complex medical condition that affects so many organ systems and consequently can affect so many aspects of people's lives. Thank you for participating today in this meeting and for sharing your stories and experiences. We heard the stories today of how scleroderma can decrease the ability to participate in activities, such as the ability to play the piano or participate in dancing. We heard how life plans have to be changed, including stopping a business, losing a job, or having to stop college in order to take care of scleroderma. We heard about how Raynaud's cold intolerance and pain is severe, and patients physically have to relocate to warmer locations in hopes of making the symptoms better, but knowing that the pain will not completely go away. We heard about how paralyzing the pain from calcinosis is, and that there are very few options in being able to alleviate the pain. Many activities that people take for granted on a day-to-day basis have to be planned carefully, including social activities, food to eat, and planning for travel in order to avoid complications of scleroderma. We heard about using ingenuity to work around the issues complicating scleroderma, including straw and tape to pick up coins, modifications to doorknobs, and methods to extract calcinosis. We heard about how the fears of developing new symptoms and dying early are major concerns with this disease. And we heard about how support groups and education about scleroderma have been very helpful in coping with scleroderma. Patients are experts in their condition. The ability to hear what is most important to patients with regards to symptoms, daily impacts, and currently available treatments for scleroderma can help FDA and other stakeholders to facilitate medical product development, as well as understand how patients view the benefits and risks of therapies and devices for scleroderma. You all have identified a lot of key issues today. Among them, we heard that pain is a significant issue with scleroderma, which can be from multiple sources. These include muscle and or bone pain, excruciating pain caused by calcinosis, and pain caused by digital ulcers. Digital ulcers have been a problem in themselves because they can also lead to loss of fingers and toes. We have heard about digestive symptoms, which limit the types of food that can be eaten and also the amount of food. We heard about only being able to eat once a day. We heard about how reflux requires significant medical intervention just to keep under control. We heard about issues with malabsorption and incontinence due to scleroderma complications. The fatigue is unpredictable and can be severe, leading to days where it is impossible to get out of bed and can limit activities that were previously routine. Other key issues include shortness of breath, requirement of oxygen, and damage that scleroderma inflicts on organs like heart, kidneys, and lung. As FDA continues striving to incorporate patient perspective more broadly into medical product development, meetings such as this scleroderma meeting you have participated in help enhance our understanding of the patient perspective and assist in moving the science of patient input forward. This input is valuable for FDA's drug review because it helps provide the underlying clinical context about the severity of the disease and currently available treatments. This context is necessary to take into account when assessing whether a drug's benefit outweighs its risk. This kind of dialogue is extremely valuable, not only for FDA, but also industry, academia, and other medical product developers in the room and on the web. The perspectives shared today can help stakeholders identify areas of unmet need in the patient population, identify or develop tools that assess benefit of potential therapies, and also raise awareness and channel engagement within the patient community. Involving patients through the drug development process has the potential to strengthen the process and improve the science. Once again, thank you for your participation and sharing your perspectives with us today. In addition, I would like to thank everyone involved in planning this meeting. Thank you.